Thank you. Today is September 28, 2021. We are in our regular City Council meeting. If you are looking at the agenda, we have actually already been meeting earlier today with a special City Council meeting. And now it is 7:05 p.m. and we are in our regular City Council meeting. I will call this meeting to order. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, citizens to be heard. Summer, do we have any electronic comments submitted in the last? Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Reminder that we are still allowing for comments to be made online and included in our citizens to be heard portion as we are still working through this pandemic. Hello, Delta. So, but we are citizens to be heard. So I've got some that have already been filled out. If you wish to speak at Citizens to be Heard this evening, we'll go through the two forms that have already been completed, but you are welcome to still speak. There are comment forms. Are they out in the hall or are they here at the podium? Mm-hmm. So we'll get through the stack I have here, and then I just welcome you to come up to the podium, fill out a comment form to be heard. First up, Charlotte. Welcome.
Thank you. This evening I just wanted to ask the question about, and I did send to both the city manager, acting city manager, and the Grand County manager, yes, Chris Baird, a letter requesting that a UDOT letter of intent for Federal Transit Administration funds for 2024. They are looking for the letter of intent to UDOT by October the 1st, 2021. And again, these are available Federal Transit Administration funds for federal fiscal year 2024 plus excess funds from other years. Just wanted to make sure that somehow, some way, Moab has applied for these available monies. They don't come around often, and I know 2024 seems like a long way away, but it really isn't. It comes up fast. The money's gone. UDOT does, they have a whole plan of action, and they follow it very carefully. And rural communities need to speak up and speak out if they want some of this money. And I think it's very important that we do that if we haven't already. And I thank you all for your time and attention. And I know that you have been diligently working towards a lot of really important things for our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Char. Amy Walling. Welcome.
So I am Amy. I'm one of the managers at Poison Spider Bicycles. Thank you for considering the alternative parking at Emma Boulevard. With parking removed from 400 North to the Colorado River, parking has become a major issue, as you already know. Parking, speeding, pedestrian, cyclist crossing, they're all issues that need to be addressed sooner than later. Before the project, we were able to offer at least 6 extra parking spaces along 191. Now that the project is complete, we technically aren't able to do that. A UDOT road maintenance supervisor recently visited the shop asking us to enforce no parking along 191. All the while, he was having to park on 191 because there wasn't any parking available. We're not able to enforce the no parking, just like we can't enforce the speeding and the aggressive driving through the North Corridor on 191. We've called the Moab City Police. We've called the Grand County Dispatch for an officer. Never have we received one. After contacting Chief Edge directly, he did move the flashing light speed box closer to the businesses, but until the traffic is actually enforced, along with the illegal parking, all of it's going to continue. I personally don't like the customers parking on 191 because with the speeds of the semis that are going by, something horrible is going to happen. Same with pedestrians trying to cross the 191 also. A bike shop, ATV businesses, convenience stores, and restaurants are all across from 4 hotels, but the only crossings are the new one north of town with flashing lights and at 200 North. It was disappointing to say the least that the crossing at 400 North did not happen. As a business, Poison Spider Bicycles has brought up these unsafe liabilities to both UDOT and the City of Moab for over 10 years with no improvement. We were led to believe that with this project being completed, these issues were going to be addressed. Yes, UDOT fixed the major traffic backups, and we're all very grateful for that. However, now we're left with an extremely unsafe Autobahn through town. Parking, speeding, pedestrian safety, all has been overlooked. Please, please. Again, I understand you guys are busy, but these are things that are going to cause something major that then it's going to be like, wow, if only we had. So we just please address these issues before we have a major accident or a death. So, thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other forms. Are there other citizens that would like to be heard this evening? Welcome. Absolutely. In fact, right now, because we've moved to moderate, masking is strongly encouraged and not required in City Hall.
I'm a great mask supporter. Thank you. My name is Jane May. I'm a 40-year resident, a survivor of life-threatening violence, and a legally protected person. An African proverb counsels, you cannot heal what you conceal. I realize that by speaking out, there may be ramifications and risks, but by remaining silent, a greater risk grows in our community, especially the risk to other victims and those marginalized citizens who are afraid to tell their stories. I am left questioning what chance do we have in this system as it currently stands, where leaders remain uncertain as to whether a problem truly exists or not. Abuse is one trauma, but being engaged with a system that purposely denies and dismisses its failures creates a whole series of traumas. And it is this trauma that compounds over and over by inaction in the face of needed change, and it further endangers victims. Chief Edge's unwillingness to take action to investigate my life-threatening event, taking almost a week to return my call to even discuss it, closing my case within hours of an arrest, and his refusal to reopen it for investigation even after I begged him to reconsider, was based on his mistaken perception that my case was not in his jurisdiction. On July 1st, 2020, I filed an official citizen's complaint per the policy of Moab Police, outlining violations to the violence against women, chest camera misuse, the lack of Moab City Police Department policy training, and even the public comment policy itself. And after 15 months, my complaint is uninvestigated and unanswered. The city council, mayor, manager, attorney were each in the possession of my complaint and are aware of its status. After being put off by city officials and their representatives these many months, I can only conclude that there is an effort to protect Moab's chief. This last December, I was asked by city officials Carly Castle and Lori Simonson to remain silent in order to have a fair investigation, to which I agreed. In late April, Lori informed us that they were just too busy with city matters to further investigate my complaint and sent it off to an outside investigator for completion. I learned this month, as a result of a grandma request, that there is no documentation at the city to prove that this person was ever engaged, then or now. Mayor and council members, You have an opportunity in tonight's executive session to take decisive action for this community and those who enter court without hope for the kind of justice and due process that Judge Torgensen addressed in recent remarks from the bench that Moab City Police Department lacked quality oversight. I ask each of you to answer my complaint by taking meaningful action regarding the leadership of Moab City Police Department. What I ask for you to finally acknowledge the need for true leadership and safety. We need serve and protect, and oaths of office kept. That victims must go to court with something other than our empty hands. And we especially must never be reduced to begging for protection. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy, welcome. Did you fill out did you fill out a comment form? I will. Thank you, Jane. Welcome, Happy.
Welcome. Good evening. My name is Happy Morgan. As you may or may not know, I was the elected prosecutor for Grand County for 8 years. I was also the prosecutor for Moab City for 8 years. I've been practicing criminal law since 1996, and I know the difference between right and wrong when it comes to matters of criminal law. I am here to speak to the issue of the improper and illegal use of chest cameras by Moab City police officers. As you know, or should know, this presiding judge in the district court recently dismissed a case, and he stated on the record, and it was a Moab City case, the problem with failure to properly use chest cameras is specific to the Moab City Police Department. How much more clear does it need to get than that? The Times Independent headline that week read, MPD body camera misuse detrimental to fair process, a direct quote from the judge. He stated that more cases will be dismissed if this is not corrected. In response to that, Chief Edge, your employee, told the Times Independent that he was unaware that there was any problem. The judge stated that it has been going on for a long time and that it appears to stem from problems of leadership. And that goes all the way up, not just the chief. I have filed a citizen complaint pursuant to the city policy and procedure in the same case that the judge was referring to when he made that statement. I am concerned that that complaint will be ignored or swept under the carpet as other complaints like Ms. May's have been in the past. I want to make it clear that chest camera violations at the Moab City Police Department are a chronic and dangerous problem. This was not an isolated incident, although some would like to pretend that it is. I work currently with 8 different law enforcement agencies, and this problem is only occurring at Moab City, nowhere else. Jim Winder in 2017 pulled the car cameras out of cars, and he assigned officers chest cameras. Now that in and of itself was a good move. The car camera missed a lot. However, almost immediately, problems began with the officers not properly using them, which really means not turning them on. You click it on, it's on your chest, it turns on. I complained in writing repeatedly to Winder, starting in the summer of 2018 and throughout the rest of that year. I went so far as to pay personally to have a hearing that I won transcribed because I wanted to present to Winder evidence of his officer's testimony in court showing misuse of body camera. He agreed in writing to fix the problem, but he did not, and neither did Edge, who was his assistant chief at that time. In June of 2019, I had a case with a Moab police officer where the body camera was improperly used. The client's initials are JL for reference. I wrote to Edge about the problem. He admitted it was a problem. He agreed to fix it, and he didn't. I grandma requested the chest camera training logs for the next 90 days, and there were none. There was no training done as a result of that incident and that promise. Again, in August of 2019, a Moab police officer arrested an individual initials JS The officer improperly shut off his camera halfway through the encounter. The recorded portions of the stop did not match the report. The case was dismissed. Again, I complained. Edge was made aware of it over and over again. In September of 2019, in the matter of the State versus Gabriel Bastion, Moab police officers, the same officer from the June incident, again, improperly used his camera. After that incident, the victim, Ms. May, and I personally met with the mayor, with the city attorney, and went through the policy and the problems. We were assured in those meetings, and there were at least 3 of them, that the problems were going to be corrected, and no action was taken. As you've just heard, Ms. May failed to get justice. She filed a complaint. 15 months have passed, and there's been no response. During 2020, a Moab City resident retained me to dispute a citation. The officer in that case did not use his camera. That officer was, in fact, Chief Edge. I have a file on that. In 2020, a Moab woman, initials AB, had her car illegally towed and impounded by a Moab City officer. She hired me. Again, no chest camera. Again, I complained. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We're now in the national spotlight for officers' failure to follow policy. As part of your investigation into my complaint regarding the failure to properly use chest cameras, look at the August 12th incident, because, again, there's something missing. 2 officers responded that day, Pratt and Robbins. Where's Pratt's camera? Every news agency in the United States has requested it, and they have not been turned over. I don't want to stand here reading this into the record, but I have followed every policy and procedure available through the city to get this problem fixed, and I have been ignored. The time for action is now, before anyone else gets hurt. And I'm fine with answering any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Happy. Did you fill out a thing?
No, but I will.
Thank you very much. Others that would like to be heard this evening? Thank you for your comments. And with that, we will move on to our next agenda item number 5, presentations. We've got 2 presentations this evening. I went ahead and put them ahead of our reporting so that in respect of their time to be able. It's always hard to hit the target of time for those presenting. So first we have Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District, a presentation, and then we'll receive a presentation by Superintendent Patricia Trapp. So welcome, CHCSSD.
Yes, that's the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District. So I'm Joette Langanese, I know most of you, and I'm the chair of the Healthcare Special Service District. This is Colette Lyman. She is the administrator of the Canyonlands Care Center. We hired Colette about 2 years ago. She started
A year and a half ago.
Yeah, she started, her first day at the care center was March 16th, 2020. I never even had a chance to meet her for 3 or 4 months after that in person, even though we had hired her. We did all our interviews on Zoom. So very fortunate to have Colette here, and our care center is running very well because of her. So I wanted to come and present to you tonight because we've been talking about this for a while. Tawny's our representative, and we really felt it was important to get before both the city and the county to share the role of what the Healthcare Special Service District does, and also the important service that the care center provides. So thank you for having us here tonight. Carly, next. So I wanted to just go over the Healthcare Special Service District role within the community when funding is available. The Healthcare Special Service District used to be called the Hospital Special Service District. In the 1990s, it was formed to help out Ellen Memorial Hospital. It was struggling, and so the county felt it was important to have a district in place where they could provide mineral lease money and other funding to support the hospital. At that time, there was an extended care facility that was a part of it. It was a 14-bed extended care facility. Unfortunately, even though we had that facility, it was not the highest quality. It was a room where two people shared a room with one person got a window, there was a curtain between them. It was just not the best situation, but it allowed people to stay in their community. And not very many people were allowed to stay in the community because there was just not enough space for them. So in the early 2000s, the county expanded our role. When we knew we were going to be getting a new hospital, a new long-term care facility, they really wanted the healthcare district to focus more on the global healthcare situation in their community. And so we were changed to the Healthcare Special Service District. And we provide services for the things that you see, or funding for what you see up on the screen there, and I'll get into that in a minute. The majority of our funding comes from the rural health sales tax. We were struggling for a while, as you all know. 4 years ago, we went before the voters, and the voters approved very resoundingly for a sales tax to go to the care center and to EMS. And so in the past, we also were receiving mineral lease money. The county took back some of that money, and so most of the funding that we have available to us now goes directly to help support the long-term care facility at Canyonlands Healthcare. We also used to be able to provide DISH payment, which is the disproportionate share for the hospital, and I don't want to go into that, it's very complicated, but we were able to provide seed money for uncompensated care for the hospital, and then the hospital then in turn would get 2/3 money back. So we would put up $300,000, the hospital would get $1 million. After we lost that mineral lease funding, we were no longer able to do that. That's a lot of money to leave on the table. We also were able to support the Moab Free Clinic, but because of our funding reduction, we were no longer able to do that. And we do share with a 60-40 split this real sales tax with emergency medical services. And I'm not coming here to ask you for money, just so you know. You're like, you heard me talking about money, going, Joette, what are you doing? I just wanted you to be aware that this is where our funding is coming from. Next. All right, so full disclosure here, the gentleman on the left in the middle picture is my father. He's at the care center, and he wanted me to share with you that we are so lucky to have this facility in our community. And he loves it there. He's 101 years old. He's showing off his Medal of Honor that he got from France from his work when he stormed Omaha Beach in Normandy. But, you know, it's real special for me to have my father there, and I'm very proud and very happy that he's with us. But primarily, as I mentioned, our funding that we get, it goes to the care center. Our care center is only 36 beds. That's unheard of. And Colette can verify this. Most long-term care facilities are 70 to 100 beds. They have to be in order to be financially viable. We have a 36-bed facility. We don't have the capacity for much more than that. We do intend at some point to expand our capacity, but you know, we need people to be able to need the service, and right now we just don't have that. So we have to subsidize the care center for about $1.2 million a year in order for it to be sustained. And you know, that's just the way that it is. And until we can get bigger, we're always going to have to subsidize that facility. And I'm going to turn it over to Colette so that she can explain to you what it is that we do at the care center and kind of what our case mix is, so that you get a better idea of what goes on there.
So nice to meet all of you. I'm Colette. I'm from Blanding. Been in long-term care for 30 years. And ran a lot of different buildings, or been the consultant for a lot of buildings across the whole West. So when COVID was creeping in and I saw this position open, I thought it's time to come home. So it's nice not to live in airports anymore, and nice to be here. And I know I've wanted to meet you all for a long time, but my focus has been 100% on our residents and keeping COVID out of our building. And there's something in here that says we're only one of 2 buildings that has managed to keep COVID out of our long-term care facility, which is awesome. She wanted me to come and meet you all for a long time, and I'm like, no, we're not out of the clear, and we're still not. But that's probably one of the reasons why our death rate from COVID is so low, is because it didn't make it into there. And as Joette said, her dad's 101. The other person in that photo was 106. So you Moab people are immortal. I've never seen anything like it. But it's an honor to run this facility and be involved with these really special people. I love the vision of this facility. I've honestly never seen a community rally around and support the care center like I have here. In all of the buildings I've been a consultant for. It's really, really special. It's a very, very nice building. So the whole vision was so all the immortal elders in this community has a place to go. I remember back when I used to run Four Corners about 15 years ago, and a lot of times we would keep some of the residents until a bed opened up here. And that's kind of what's happening now. We are at full capacity and with a waiting list. We are a 5-star facility, and we get all of our reimbursement through private pay and Medicaid, which doesn't really pay that much. So like Joette said, we are subsidized through the sales tax, which I think the people wouldn't have voted for if they didn't have that same vision of making sure their grandma and grandpas need to be taken care of. They don't have to go out and stay away. So we're in the process of applying for Medicare skilled license. That's pretty technical. There's a lot involved to that, but we're still working on that. The next one. So in our facility, the age ranges from 76 to 106, and you can look up on the screen and just see all of the different comorbidities that a lot of the people that we take care of. And we're not a skilled facility yet, we're just a long-term care facility, but we have some pretty complicated residents, but we're glad to take care of them and serve this community. Next one. And yeah, this one says we're one of 3 long-term care. We're now one of 2. So to keep COVID out, and we've followed every rule and regulation all the way through this whole thing. We follow the Department of Health's rules perfectly. That's how we've been able to keep it out.
Can't we put you in charge of the whole county, Colette?
What's that?
Can't we put you in charge of the whole county? Just for that.
I don't know about that. You lock us in, shut the door. Staffing is a challenge, just like anywhere else. We're down 11 full-time employees, but we've got a lot of super great staff that wear many hats and are flexible and fill in. And so we have some really good committed staff to our residents, but that's the reason why we probably wouldn't be able to expand for a while, is because of staffing, but you all know about that in every industry in this town. Just like Joette was saying, the day I came, I had just locked down 2 facilities in California, drove here, locked down, the Band-Aid came out that day I got here, and we locked down our facility. So they went 10 months without seeing their loved ones except for through the fence or a window. We're lucky to have things in place where they can come in and visit their loved ones now, so that's really nice, but we're still really careful. And our volunteers are back, and they still can't come out in the community, but they can at least go to their loved ones now that they're vaccinated. It was very hard for them throughout that whole time, but we managed to beef up our activity programs and keep these people healthy and happy. And let's see, is this back to you?
No.
Okay, and what we're trying to do right now, like I said, we're applying for our Medicare skilled license, and what that will do is we will be a supplement to the hospital swing bed program, so they can go to the hospital swing bed program for 20 days of their benefits, and then they could come to us and still continue the therapy. And if they do go home, then we can get them all more ready so they succeed at home and don't have to be re-hospitalized. So that's in the future. We are lucky enough to just hire a CNA instructor, a certified CNA instructor. So she is making a program that we're going to be turning into the state so we can train our own CNAs in this town, and that will help the hospital, that will help home health, that will help all of the things, because the college is wonderful, but sometimes they only have 3 or 4 people in their program in one semester. So we're only putting out like 8 to 10 CNAs a year through the college, and most of those are just doing it so they can go on to nursing school. So
Might want to explain what a CNA is.
oh, certified nurse aide, for those of you who don't know, they're very important. They're the backbone and the front line of taking care of our residents. Very important. We are much to, I've been kind of, like I said, against really putting ourselves out there during this COVID thing because we have the most vulnerable people, but now that I feel like we're a little bit of the coast is a little more clear, we're going to be getting our website and social media going and just letting you all know what we're doing. Instead of me just locking us in and making sure we're all safe. So, and what's the last? And we're always looking at different fundraising opportunities to subsidize our revenue and the sales tax. So,
There is a foundation, the Moab Healthcare Foundation, so we feel it would be a good opportunity to start raising some money to help support some of the needs of the care center as well as the hospital. So that's about it. I just wanted to share with you some of the cool stuff. We have pet therapy. There's 2 cats that live in the care center now. They sleep on my dad's bed. I went in there yesterday. There's this cat curled up at the foot of his bed. It's so awesome. We have a beautiful garden, tomatoes, peppers, all kinds of fruits and vegetables that Colette cooks up for the residents. So a lot of really neat stuff. I really encourage you all to take the opportunity to come and visit the facility at some time.
come anytime.
In fact, we should probably organize a tour for you if you're interested, because before it gets too cold, because it's really a lovely place. And then the last slide here is the budget, and I don't really need to go into this. This was really this is what we presented to the county, but just so you know, we'll probably be budgeting a little bit more this year. The county's predicting that sales tax is going to be 30 to 50% higher than 2019. Skeptical, but we'll see. And if that's the case, then we'll be able to fund some of those things we were unable to fund last year and the year before. So that's it, you guys. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
No questions, but congratulations. I've been playing music down there once a month for like 3 or 4 years now, and I have never, I'm not exaggerating, I have never seen a resident treated by anybody on the staff with anything less than patience and kindness and courtesy the whole time I've been there. I mean, you get stories about, Mrs. Jones, get back in your seat. It just doesn't happen. So that's a great thing. I want to congratulate you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Yeah, it's really a special place. So
Thank
thanks
you.
for the time.
Yep, thank you for the presentation
You're welcome.
and for your work in our community. And now we are on to the next presentation. Park Service parkies, come on up. Presentation by Patricia Trapp, Superintendent of the Southeastern Utah Group Area, National Parks, and her park posse. Welcome, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
but
great.
with masks, it's always good to bring the microphone as closer. It's always helpful. You can scoot or you bring it to you. It's mobile.
There you go.
There you go. Welcome.
Well, thanks, and thank you for inviting me here today. My name is Patty Trapp, and I have the honor of serving as Park Superintendent of Arches National Park, and we thank you for the opportunity to discuss Arches visitor use planning at this meeting. There are 2 things I want to start off with that are really important. Success is going to require collaboration, and secondly, our goal is to distribute visitation, not limit it. I want you to remember those 2 points because they're key. Today I'm joined by Amy Tendick and Kate Thomas. Amy Tendick is our park planner and brings a wealth of institutional knowledges to the challenges of congestion and crowding at the park and is coordinating our ongoing planning efforts. And if you have questions afterwards, she'll be the one answering all the details. And secondly, I'm really excited to announce Kate Thomas, who is our new public affairs specialist. Kate seeks to collaborate with the community on information sharing to help locals and visitors create meaningful experiences at the park. And she's very happy to come home. So we're really happy to have a Moabite here. Congress established Arches National Park for the purpose of protecting extraordinary examples of geologic features, including arches, natural bridges, windows, spires, balanced rocks, as well as other features of geologic, historic, and scientific interest, and to provide opportunities to experience those resources and their associated values in their majestic natural settings. When the park is too crowded, we can no longer meet this mission to protect the park's resources, nor can we provide safe, undiminished recreational opportunities. So since many of you know, since 2019, the National Park Service has been engaged in several data collection efforts to inform possible solutions to ease congestion and crowding in the park. We recently shared preliminary findings from those efforts in virtual public meetings, and we would like to touch on those efforts today. We recently conducted an updated visitor use study of arches to better understand the park's visitation patterns and our visitors' expectation. This study found 3 items of note, and probably no surprise to all of you. First, we found that the vast majority of our visitors visit Delicate Arch, the windows, and our Devil's Garden, no matter when we try to encourage them elsewhere. When folks are making their bucket list, they're thinking of these 3 sites when they plan a visit to Arches. Second, on visitation patterns, we have found that visitors are arriving earlier than ever. Though vehicle arrivals may peak from about 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., the park has had to limit entries on or before 8 a.m. There is an afternoon plateau that lasts up until about 6 p.m., and visitors stay in the park an average around 3 to 5 hours. Finally, at the park's most popular destinations in those peak times, we observed conditions where people are at one time are higher than the point at which visitors expressed a belief that the National Park Service should take action, or that visitors stated they would not return again to the park. This suggests that the experience for the average visitor is being diminished. It's this study's outcome that point to a need for more theoretical models to practical tests through the piloting potential solutions, such as timed entry. We are planning a timed entry pilot in spring of 2022. We believe this pilot will help us proactively pace visitation into the park and provide visitors with a safe, reliable, and more enjoyable experience while protecting the resources that made this park so special. Arches is committed to working with the local communities to develop a pilot timed entry system that ensures fair and equitable access to the park. In addition to our timed entry pilot, we are also considering several strategies to address congestion within the park, including a mandatory shuttle system, a voluntary shuttle system in conjunction with the timed entry system, and site-specific reservations. Before taking any action, and as I said in the beginning, we want to ensure we collaborate with the local community and our stakeholders through this planning process, especially as we pilot that reservation system for the park. We're hoping that you might help us better understand the community's views around congestion and crowding at the park, as well as with a timed entry pilot. As a reminder, we want to distribute visitation, not limit it. Our preliminary data shows that during certain seasons, times of days, and days of week, visitation varies significantly. Our hope is to better spread that visitation over time to limit congestion and crowding. But we believe this will lead to more visitation, not less, and will create a higher quality experience. And again, success requires collaboration. To implement this pilot successfully, we need to hear your thoughts and concerns and the whole community's thoughts and concerns. To view our story map and submit your comments, I don't know if any of you have seen this story map. It's pretty spectacular. It shares a lot of information. So to view that story map and submit your comments, you can go to go.nps.gov/arches. We are accepting formal comments until October 5th. And they must be submitted through the public comment website in order to be considered. And so with that, I welcome your questions.
Well, gosh, thanks for the presentation, and that's just, thank you for taking the time that you needed to come to the conclusions and collect the data that you did. And thanks to all staff that have worked very diligently to listen and to work on this issue. I don't know if we want, there could be a lot of questions, and this is set as a presentation.
Okay.
So if council members or community members have questions, who do we call? Because you said Amy, but Amy's probably like, oh my gosh.
No, I thought if you had any questions, this is the first time I've been here, so I'm sorry,
Yes.
I don't know the protocol, but I'll learn.
It's okay.
But no, just in case you had questions around specific data and specific concerns, that's why Amy came. But yes,
Got
you
it.
can.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is me, Kate Thomas again, and I have either you can email my Park Service account, which is just Caitlin, KAITLYN _Thomas, THOMAS, at nps.gov, or you can contact me at the new public affairs email address, and that is SEUG_public_affairs
At NPS.
nps.gov. Yeah, so
Do you want to give them your number?
Sure. Yeah, my cell phone still is a DC number, but it's 202-763-3440, and I can collect all of those comments and we can get those questions answered. But if you do have specific comments that you want us to consider in the planning process, definitely submit those through the Pepsi website that Patty mentioned, and that's at go.nps.gov/arches.
And comments period ending is what again?
October 5th.
October 5th.
So it's coming up.
So speak now. And timed entry launching spring.
Yes.
So March. What is?
Most likely April.
Most likely April. Okay. And rec.gov?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So that'll be our next step that we're going to start working through. And as we come up with some of those answers, again, we want to really look to collaborate with the community, and we're open to how we do that collaboration, whether we come and talk here, we have some larger meetings. And so that's one of the things that's on my mind right now. So again, we welcome insight into what that collaboration would look like.
Well, and I want you to feel welcome to come to call and get on our agenda as you're developing the what it's going to look like, so that you can present. There's always a reporter in the room, and it's always a great way to be heard. But really, if you, just as you're moving forward with organizing it, you are welcome to come to the council meetings between now and the spring, just to provide as much education as we can to the locals, because I know there's concern about getting in the park when it's busy, but also to the business owners and the frontline staff of our hotels and our restaurants, of how to answer these questions. And if you come up also with materials like frequently asked questions, QR code, things that we can put at front desks and at visitors, the MIC, City Hall, we're happy to help with the distribution of, as we can, and just to get the information out. We can put it on our website through our social media as well, to get the information out so that the workers in Moab can clearly explain, so that you're not getting the anger at the fee booth, but we can do what we can to prepare our visitors before they get here and then when they're here. So thank you.
Yeah,
and thanks for coming tonight.
The next time we'll bring pictures. It's the first time again.
Oh, like even a demo of using the system would be kind of fun.
Do you think we can do that?
might be helpful, especially to give locals a sneak peek at it. Because again, we'll want to be utilizing the system as well as a lot of us that, work with visitors, be able to take them through the process as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. All right, next on our agenda, administrative reports. Acting City Manager updates, Carly Castle.
Hey, good evening. I have printed out some of my acting city manager reports for your reference, and I've made them available to the public too. And we might just put them on the website so they're available to folks who might have some questions about what's going on in the city. I want to start with some an exciting announcement. The Red Rock Arts Festival is beginning this weekend and runs through next week. It's one of my favorite events that we throw. It makes me happy to be a local because I get to attend that. Obviously, Street Fest will be taking place on October 9th, but there are a lot of events throughout the week. And I would just want to thank our Parks and Rec staff and art staff for all their excellent hard work to put this event on. And you can find information about this at redrockartsfestival.com. An update on our Well 12 construction. So the casing and gravel pack for the well has been installed. And what we're doing next is called development of the well, which means flushing water through the system and understanding how much water we can draw from it. We are then going to be constructing the pump house, the facility around it, and we're on track to have that up and running by June 2022. So still on track. Yeah.
Excuse me, Carly, how much do you think we're finally going to get out of the well?
I don't want to place bets because I don't want to jinx it. It's doing well so far. We're optimistic. We've had great success with it. I know we do have specs for it, and Chuck can speak to that when he gets down here. But really, we don't quite know until we start drawing to see what it's like. Another construction update, we have the Mill Creek water line replacement that you funded this spring with a bond. That will be starting in the next few weeks in mid-October. It will last approximately 6 months, that construction. So we're going to be doing some public engagement to inform residents, especially the residents living in proximity to Mill Creek Drive. An update on our transit efforts. We are going to be applying to become certified as a transit entity. That makes us eligible to receive FTA funds under the 5311 program. And just as an update too, we did submit a letter of intent as well for 2024 funding. So that's done, and I believe the county is doing the same. And related to that, we have procured Love Communications to do our branding and logo development for that. They've done some they're a well-established firm. They do exciting work. And this will include public engagement as well as engagement of you and the county commission. So details to follow on that. One kind of final update regards staffing and organization. So it may be a few months before we have a permanent city manager in place. And so we've appointed Ben Billingsley to be the acting deputy city manager until that person is appointed. This means that he'll take over management of some city departments, just so I'm able to sort of sustain some executive functions related to intergovernmental affairs, legal services, those kinds of things. It also benefits because we can get Ben cross-trained on a bunch of different departments just outside of his finance director scope. So thank you, Ben, for being willing to step into that role. I really appreciate it. Any questions on any of those items?
I don't know that we need to know, but maybe just a quick list of those departments Ben is overseeing so we can spare sending you emails about this.
Yeah, that's no problem. And we will also update the organizational chart that's on the website and provide it to you too for reference. It's going to be HR, Parks and Rec, and Recorder for now. So Parks and Rec is one of our biggest departments. We have a very capable department director, of course, too, but it'll be great to get him, help him manage such a large department as well as get him fully trained on the comings and goings and day-to-day of those departments. So that means I'll be keeping engineering, planning, public works, police, of course, communications, kind of finance. But those are the ones that will be remaining with me. All right, with that, I'll turn things over to our Assistant Police Chief, Braden Palmer, who is here. He's here to answer some questions that we've been hearing in the community. He's going to be providing a demo too, so we'll welcome our Assistant Chief.
So Carly, I just want to thank you for writing these out.
Yeah.
This is a great help to me anyway.
Okay, good.
And others as well, I expect, so thank you.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Thank you for speaking tonight as part of reports.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for your service.
So just to get started, I want to thank the council, the mayor, the community for allowing me to, one, fill this position and to be here tonight to address you. While here, I'd also like to take the opportunity to publicly recognize my officers and thank them for their continued service. We've been at the forefront of some public scrutiny in the past couple of weeks, but we will persevere, and I'm optimistic about moving forward. Also, just take a moment to thank Ms. Morgan and Ms. May for their comments. Ms. May for being brave enough to stand and share your personal experience with trauma and as it relates to victims, so thank you. There are two main items that I've been asked to focus on this evening, and the first is body-worn cameras. I think the first point that I would really like to cover for the council and for staff is our body-worn camera policy. Now, I have provided copies of that for the council. Any of you that are interested in that, I'm more than happy to provide it to you. Our body-worn camera policy reflects verbatim, word for word from state statute. In fact, our body-worn camera policy throughout actually references that state statute. I've attached the state statute to the body-worn camera policy. The nice thing about it reflecting state statute is it's very clear about when we should, when we shouldn't, when we are allowed to deactivate out of respect for victims, witnesses, and conferring with supervisors about department-related decisions and things of that nature. Like I said, I think I will deflect to the council and answer specific questions maybe about that policy rather than sitting here and reading it all to you and boring you with that. In regards to our policy and procedure, we have implemented, and it's not a recent thing, but it's been out there for a couple of years now, what we call daily training bulletins. So each day, and all of our officers and our entire staff receives some sort of scenario. They're presented with a scenario through our policy programs that they're required to read and respond to basically a question of, in this situation, you're presented with this problem. This is the policy that applies. What is the correct thing for you to do moving forward? And they're required to complete one of those every single day that they are at work. Now, as far as our body-worn cameras go, we wear and I actually brought it for show and tell. All of our officers are issued an Axon Body 3. Axon, I think, tends to be at the forefront of body-worn cameras. They're proven, and it's why we went with them. I think the downfall of Axon is they are expensive, very, very expensive. Their software is expensive. They retain all of our footage on a server. That storage, again, very, very expensive. Ms. Morgan commented on some of the functionality of it while she was here, and I appreciate that. But, you know, when it comes down to it, they are kind of a simple thing to operate. So officers are required to power them on at the beginning of their shift. They're required to function check them to ensure that they work properly. Now, all of us are required to wear them in a conspicuous manner that they're visible to the public. All of our officers nowadays wear what we call load-bearing vests. They look kind of big and bulky, and we carry lots of things on our chest. But one of those things is this body-worn camera. None of my staff I'll make it clear, none of my staff object to wearing these things. 99% of the time, they exonerate my officers of wrongdoing, and they protect us, and we appreciate that. Now, in order to activate this body-worn camera, there's a large button on the center of it, here. I'm more than happy to show it to the public as well. Right here. A double click activates that camera. If you notice, you didn't hear any beeping buzzing, lights flashing on my camera. That's a decision that I've made. It actually vibrates. So I'm able to feel it through my chest, through my body armor, and able to feel that vibration, and it's enough to remind me that that camera is on. To deactivate it, the same button, press and hold. You hear the beep and it discontinues the video. Now the camera itself stores that footage until the end of our shift. We take it back to the station, we plug it into a dock that charges it, and it uploads it to the server. State law also requires that certain types, that each video is categorized a certain way. If we respond to a felony, that video is retained for a certain amount of time. If we respond to a misdemeanor, again, a certain amount of time. Citizen complaints, if we do receive a citizen complaint on an officer, that video will be categorized as such, and it actually requires manual deletion from our system in order for it to ever purge, so that it retains forever at the discretion of our administration. Another function of the camera. Now, state law and our policies is also very specific on utilization of this button as well, and that's the mute function. So we do have the ability to press and hold this side button here, which will actually mute the body-worn camera. Video still works, you still see what the officer's doing, you just don't hear what they're saying. I think this has been something that we've been scrutinized on a little bit lately. Now understand, policy and state law are clear on this as well. We are allowed to mute our body-worn camera or even deactivate it when conferring with other officers or a supervisor. That is something specified in state law. However, I can understand the perception that may come along with that. Most of my officers across the board understand that perspective, and not very often is that camera muted or even shut off. That's kind of the function of the camera. Like I said, I do have copies of the policy. If there's any specific questions on our body-worn cameras or our policy that the council has or staff has, I'm more than happy to answer those questions at this time.
Can I ask a question? Folks have asked me, how long does a battery tend to last? Like, can you use one camera all day, or do you have to tend to come by and switch out batteries? Or, I mean, I guess it depends on, how long of calls you're out,
Very, very good question. So our officers standardly work a 10-hour shift. Due to lack of staffing, recently they work a 12-hour shift. I would say that this camera is designed for a 10-hour shift. A lot of the times at the end, especially, it's also dependent on how busy that officer is, how often the body-worn camera is activated, and things of that nature. I will say I turned mine on today for probably an hour and a half while out and about, and it's at 85%. So they do die quickly. We try and pay attention to it as much as we can. If officers come in and say, hey, I'm at 9 hours with my shift, my camera's dead, we replace it. That's the nice thing is body-worn cameras, we're lucky that there's a lot of grants out there nowadays to secure them. So any other questions?
So when you say replace them, do they recharge? So
yeah,
you don't have to get a new one?
Yeah, so like I said, every night we do have a docking station for our cameras, and then officers are all provided with a charging cable that, it's just like a cell phone charger. It's a USB-C, you plug it into the bottom and it'll charge it. The docking stations are used majority of the time. It's better for them to plug it in at the end of the night. The footage uploads, and then they don't ever run into the issue of overloading the camera with too much footage. I've never seen that happen, but I'd imagine if if somebody chose never to plug the thing in, it's a possibility. But so they do recharge, yes, but I think just like any other lithium battery, they do have a lifespan for sure. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got one for you. I know when I'm turning stuff on and off all the time, I'm always forgetting. So if you're muted, for example, is there a repetitive audio or video feedback to you that, oh, I'm on mute, for example, so you won't you think you're running it, but you're not,
right.
You're not aware of
Right,
that?
very, very, very good question. So officers would have the ability, so there is a volume setting, and you can make it fairly loud. Like I said, I never mute my body-worn camera. It's never been a practice that I've had. I feel that, I would rather say something stupid to another officer and be scrutinized for that than be questioned on whether or not I was acting appropriately. Now, there is an indicator on the top of it. There's a screen that we're able to see on the top of it. Not very much contrast. It's black and white. At night, it doesn't illuminate unless you manually click a button on the body-worn camera to illuminate it, to then be able to say yes, it is muted. It's a function I don't like in these cameras. So yes and no. I guess there's no real clear answer. But I think you touched on a very good point that human error is a major factor in body-worn cameras. You know, that our police officers are human, and that does occur. So.
Okay, well, thank you. The only other thing I might add is I think Mrs. Morgan has an excellent point. There is work that needs to be done by your staff to take more consistent control of your cameras. And having said that, I did read your procedures thing. Brett said, read all of this. Don't fail to read it. And I did. And I was struck by the number of what I would call judgment calls that officers have to make. I mean, sometimes stuff is night and day. You must turn on your camera. But there's other places where, well, should I do this? Should I do that? Well, I don't know. It's up to the officer's judgment. And that's the difficult part of your job.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you commenting on it.
So when officers are working together, is there a buddy system to check camera usage, or is it just up to the individual officers to know what they're doing with their camera?
Right, so there's no real clear way for another officer. Like I said, in order to see that this camera is activated, you really have to be able to see that top screen, be able to feel the vibration, or if the officer chooses to listen to this beep all night long, the other officer would be able to hear that. But ultimately, yes, it is up to the specific officer to ensure that their body-worn camera is on. Now, we've kind of commented a little bit tonight on the human error, and I think I want to expound on that. Like I said earlier, Axon is one of the top brands that you can own as a police agency as far as body-worn cameras go. Axon invests millions and millions of dollars every year to develop tools to eliminate the human error. For example, integration with vehicles. There's tools out there to integrate our body-worn cameras with an in-car camera that when you turn your lights and siren on, every camera you have on your body comes on. Problem with that's money, right? Budget. The internal camera and those types of systems in comparison to the cost of this camera is significant. Very easy to secure grants on this. Grants are great to pay for a lot of things, but and in fact, I will comment, we do have staff that are actually looking into grants to reintegrate the dash cameras back into our vehicles, and in hopes that we can also bring in what's called the blueprint system that connects this camera to the dash camera to then eliminate some of that human error. Axon's come out with things like an attachment for your firearm. When you pull your firearm, the camera comes on. When you pull your taser, the camera comes on. Issue with that is, the moments leading up to when that happened, it doesn't catch that. All of our cameras are set to pre-record video 30 seconds prior to activation. So we're fortunate that we can, a lot of the times, alleviate, our officers respond to a very, very volatile situation. People screaming, yelling, fighting each other, wanting to fight the police, putting the public at risk. A lot of the times our first thought is to protect the public, not to take the time to activate this. When an officer arrives on scene, our MDT system or our mobile dispatch terminal, the computer system that we run, we have to log ourselves that we're responding to a new call. We get on the radio, we tell dispatch we're going to a new call. We arrive at the call. If it's volatile, I have to pick up my radio, let dispatch know I'm there, click this button, jump out, and try and prevent the public from being injured. There are times where this button is forgot in those few moments. It's human nature, it's human error. Now, I will 100% agree with you, Councilman Duncan. There is room to improve. There's always room to improve. And my agency is dedicated to that and will continue to be dedicated to improvement, training. And I think really stress inoculation training is a huge topic in the U.S. right now. Stress inoculation simulators, they're phenomenal. We're looking into grants for those types of things now. Axon actually provides one that integrates with the body-worn camera, that integrates with the taser, your firearm, puts you into a virtual reality simulator in those intense situations so you can start to document things like this. what is it that the officer's forgetting? What is it that they need to continuously train on to fix issues like this? So I agree with you 100%. There's always room for improvement, and we're dedicated to that.
Can I just ask a follow-up to that, the stress inoculation? I know it might be a few months ago, everything's a blur at this point, it might have been a year ago. We know in one training, I think the chief talked about, you guys had the opportunity, or some of you, to do the virtual reality, I think, now I'm gonna have a brain fart. To use some virtual reality equipment to practice the use of force, I think. And so is that all the same, kind of same technology, same kind of, just different scenarios?
Same thing. So we looked at a system that's called Smart VR. So it's the same type headset you could go buy at Best Buy to play video games. And however, they create attachments that go to specific firearms used by police officers, for tasers, for batons, flashlights, things of that nature. They create simulations and scenarios that are derived from actual police responses. They have actors that, are on a green screen and create these scenarios. So yes, we have tested it. We've opted to look at the Axon route because of the integration with equipment that we already own. Again, it's a matter of money, so I hate to sit and beat a dead horse as far as money goes, but law enforcement and police departments, our equipment is not cheap. The average police officer, the equipment that their uniform alone is thousands of dollars. So, but we are dedicated. We are dedicated to continuing to move forward, to improve our procedures, to continuously train our officers to address these concerns from the community.
And I only ask this because I know some doctors and pilots, and books have been written about the checklist and what have you. But I didn't know, does it ever help an officer, like if you were arriving on scene and you had to radio in and say, okay, I'm here, would it help to have some kind of like a 10-4 or something, but where the other person says to you, okay, is your camera on? And you say, yes, camera's on. I have no idea, but right. I don't know if that can help or not. I know minutes, seconds matter, but.
Absolutely, and I think in hindsight that would be phenomenal. But that would be something that would have to come more than likely from a dispatcher.
Gotcha, okay.
Who's also, our dispatchers are talking on the call with the person who's in danger, being attacked, screaming and yelling in a fight, listening to them in one ear and then trying to communicate with. I don't think it's something that is realistic.
Okay.
To be quite honest.
Gotcha.
Any other questions regarding body-worn cameras? All right. So moving forward, the second topic that I was asked to speak on, and just to put this out there, I will have to be quite, I won't be able to dig into this topic very deep and talk about specifics, but more generalities of what this process looks like, and that's internal affairs investigations. And I think really, the word investigation comes out and it sounds like a big scary thing. It sounds like, when a police officer goes out and investigates the public, something bad has happened. Well, when it comes to police officers and internal affairs investigations are also used to exonerate police officers, to clear them of wrongdoing. But I think to really understand what it is that kicks this whole process off, our policy, the way it is written currently, requires that any complaint that we receive that cites misconduct, a policy violation, or a violation of criminal law requires this type of investigation. Now, there's an internal affairs investigation and there's also an internal review. They're two very, very different things, and I'm going to focus on the internal affairs investigation tonight. So, like I said, it requires a specific allegation in order to kick that off. Now, the process of this generally involves, the very first thing would be notification to the officer that they are under internal affairs investigation. Now, that generally comes in the form of a written document that they are required to sign. That document has to specify what the allegation is and what policy is being violated, or potentially what criminal act was committed. Now, that document would also specify whether or not administrative leave is required. Administrative leave is required when there is a continued risk to the public based on the officer's behavior, or criminal violations. And the criminal violations is not all-encompassing. I think there is some discretion that the administration can have. Obviously, major crimes and things of that nature, it's very clear. But there are circumstances where an officer is accused of trespassing in regards to his response to a call that, it allegates the criminal offense of trespassing, but because he was there as a police officer, that may not be the case. It may not fit under that statute, but ultimately that was the claim. And then really, from there, after that officer is notified, they'll either be placed on administrative leave or they'll go back to work. From that point in time, dependent on what the allegations are, the severity, and at the discretion of the chief, that investigation will be assigned. It can be assigned to a supervisor, and a lot of the times, as small as we are, we rely heavily on other agencies, especially when major things, when there's any type of large-scale event that's, for example, we have things going on now in our community that we have opted to refer investigations out, and that's public knowledge at this point. Now, the investigation will entail the exact same thing a criminal investigation would entail. That officer has a right to due process. They have a right to representation, whether in the form of a labor attorney or legal counsel. Outcomes, interviews will be conducted, evidence will be collected. When an investigation is being, if another entity is assisting us with an investigation, we'll provide them with whatever necessary information there is that they need. Reports, body-worn camera footage, evidence photographs, things of that nature. Now, the outcome of internal affairs investigations generally come in the form of recommendations. A recommendation will be made to our office. Administration then makes a determination whether to act on that recommendation, to train, whether it's a training issue, policy issue, or ultimately the officer messed up. I have never seen an agency not follow through with recommendations if they refer it to an outside agency, but it could happen. Like I said, I really have to speak in generalities tonight. I can't get into any current issues, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions about the process from the council. Perfect. No questions. Makes it very, very easy for me. So I guess just in closing, again, thank you for allowing me to be here tonight to comment. I'm grateful I'm very new to this position. However, I've loved every minute of it. I love my officers. I will continue to support them. I support every one of them, and I want them to know that. The men and women of the Moab City Police Department serve this community because they love this community, and I want everyone in here to understand that. That's what motivates us. We love the people that we serve. I don't know of any of my staff that isn't service-oriented, that doesn't believe in that mission. I just want to take the time to thank the community and you all for your continued support, and reiterate that our mission at the police department is one of action and transparency. This is a mission that I and my team are dedicated to supporting and accomplishing. I am supportive of our team. I am supportive of our great officers, and grateful for the dedicated city staff who continue to support us in carrying out our mission. Thank you for your time tonight.
Assistant Chief Palmer, I want to say thank you. Hold on before you go. Come back here. That the love is mutual. Thank you for your service. We never get to decide when, the moment is that we are called to serve, and especially in this capacity. So thank you for stepping up. Thank you for your comments tonight and the clarity that I think we were all curious about. Just the explanation of policy is so helpful. There's just a lot going on in the community, lots of conversations, so this is so helpful. And so thank you for for the 2 presentation topics. Thank you for stepping up. Again, the feeling is mutual. And I very much care for you and the officers as well, as does the council and the community. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your coming to our council meeting tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah. Carly, is that it in terms of administrative reporting?
Yep, it is.
Okay.
That's what I've got.
Then we will move on to agenda item 7, mayor and council reports. First things first, I want to say thank you to you, Carly Castle, for also being called to step up and serve at this time. Thank you so much for being willing to do so and doing it with an openness and a willingness. I very much appreciate it. And to the council, Carly is doing a great job stepping up. She's very present and she's working well with staff. And as she reported with working with Ben, it has felt very functional at City Hall. So thank you to you, Carly, and thank you also to you, Ben. I appreciate you both. Thanks. Also, thanks to the candidates who are running for mayor and city council. We're just popping popcorn. But we are very grateful, and I am very grateful as well. Please feel free to reach out to us, and thank you for those of you that are attending these meetings, because you don't have to yet, but it is helpful to know how they operate, especially when you get on this side of the dais. You get a little nervous, huh? And it's helpful to get some, some experience in the hall before that happens. Thank you. Also, if you're Jewish, Happy New Year. Council, I just wanted to let you know that I did meet with Biga to discuss the change. You know, she was curious and just wanted a sort of an elected perspective of the change, and you know, reiterated to her, as well as receiving a letter of support from the Film Commission for the state of Utah, that the intention, as I heard you state it in your motion, was not to eliminate, but just to do the action that we've been talking about for a while. So I just wanted to report that that is happening, and Carly, you know, has been working, and as well as Annie, to facilitate that. And so we can expect reporting on that in the future, but I just didn't want it to drop off without reporting back that that's happening. Let's see. Michelle Rabin, I think that's how you pronounce her last name. She is the director for the mosquito abatement. I got to interface with her crew as they were walking around my property looking for basins filled with mosquito larvae. And with the whole spraying, there was a lot of conversation about whether or not fogging was a welcome way of dealing with mosquitoes. And so I told Michelle that I would do what I can to help with prevention. So no one likes fogging, but we can be preventative and we can be proactive. So this is a call to action for all of us to go to our yard and look for basins that fill with water, especially as we're getting trickle rain. Anything that can collect water can collect mosquitoes. And, fun fact, anything that has collected water and mosquitoes and dried up, mosquitoes rehydrate. It just gets worse. When they rehydrate, you can see them swimming in the water because their tails, they're very tiny, but their tails sort of wiggle. So if you see little wiggly worms and little petals, those are likely mosquitoes. And they turn into vicious biting creatures, invisible vicious biting creatures. And so it's not only dumping water, but also treating those basins that frequently collect water as they may be still holding larvae. And one area that is often overlooked is the tray that holds the potted plant. You can have like 50 little larvae collect in just a little dish, like a little divot on the dish. So please help those neighbors that don't appreciate the fogging and those neighbors that don't appreciate the mosquitoes by doing your part to make sure that you get rid of any standing water and that you clean your basins. On behalf of Michelle. What else? I wanted to say thank you to the Moab Valley Multicultural Center for continuing the tradition of Dancing with the Moab Stars. They did a video instead of an event this year. That event has been, for the past several years, a huge fundraiser for them. And that is a big hit for them not to have that as a revenue source. So I just wanted to say thank you to them for doing the video. I know they didn't get near the money. They didn't raise near the money. I asked them for the amount, but it's kind of a hard one to calculate. The reality is that if you are a supporter of the Multicultural Center, this is a good time to say thank you for their work in the form of a donation. And it was a really fun event to do. Amanda, our officer, and I carried the American flag and sort of led the procession. And that was a really fun event to do with her. She's a great officer. What else? I just wanted to report that we do intend to have a celebration on October 11th on the front lawn of City Hall to celebrate our Indigenous Native members of our community. I just wanted to let you know we're going to spend a little money on it, and I do intend to collaborate with partners to produce the event, money that is in our administrative budget. So I just want to let you know, please, if you want to talk to me about that event, help with it, or any questions that you have.
Do we have a time yet, or that's forthcoming?
So here's the complicated thing. The candidate forum is that evening as well, starting at 4. But we have typically held it at evening as well. And I don't really want to be a conflict, and I think it's easier for us to go earlier. However, there may be some overlap, as it has been very nice to have sunset, sunset as sort of the closure of the event. So to be determined, my goal with this celebration has always been to create the invitation and the platform to celebrate in the way that is culturally appropriate and celebratory. So I will work with partners to ensure that it's a good event. And then also there was Recovery Days and the YGP Harvest Fest this past weekend. So many events are going on. And I just wanted to say thank you to giving Recovery Days the permission to use the ball fields. I know it's, using the parks is a complicated event, but it really is amazing to celebrate those that are in recovery in our community. And then finally, October 13 is a Moab public hearing. Redistricting happens once every 10 years. Make sure your voice is heard. Join us for a night of redistricting to share your concerns and give your input. So that is October 13 here at Moab City Hall at 6 p.m. And if you can't make it, you can participate via Zoom at uirc.utah.gov. It's a big deal that the Redistricting Commission is coming to Moab. When they came to Monticello, I said, I can't drive to Monticello, it's nighttime, there are deer between here and there. Will you come to Moab? And they said yes, and they're coming, and that's wonderful. So I'm hopeful. Redistricting is a big deal. And, Karen, with all your work with making sure everybody counts and the census data that really supports the redistricting effort, I am hopeful that we have a good participation here for that event. And that's it from me.
Right, okay. I'll try to.
Oh, well, I guess you'll.
Poor Mike. I'm going to speak for Mike tonight because I can't get used to sitting in this chair. Okay, Mike? I'm giving you all my time.
Sure you're cool with this?
I still don't understand why I'm sitting here.
I don't either. Somebody switch the name tag.
Yeah, it's real quick, yeah. It's been pretty quiet, actually. All the fuss about city stuff. I want to thank, first and foremost, Carly for taking the time to talk quite a long time to me. We had a lot of things to talk about, so thank you, Carly.
Yeah, of course.
I really appreciate that. And Ben, good luck. out there. Okay. And about the only other thing that was going on, you guys may know that there's a north side of King Creek Boulevard. There's about a 10-acre parcel out there that's, a lot of it is RA1 and riparian areas and so forth, and a developer wants to turn that into pretty dense affordable housing. That's the magic thing, and the trick is we're trying to make sure a good piece of it becomes workforce housing. We haven't decided exactly how we're going to define workforce yet, but I think we all know what it means. Everybody who wants to live and work here, fundamentally, a place that they can afford. And I think, for the most part, most of us agree most of the time, I think that just straight market rate's not going to cut it. So it means doing something, usually some sort of a public subsidy, one way or the other, and there's a variety of ways of doing it. So we've been going around and around about how to make this happen. It is not easy. So anyway, so there's more to come on that, so stay tuned.
Thank you for working on that, Mike.
Sure.
Okay, sorry, Mike. You can beat it out of me later. I got chocolate. September 16th, we just, the small committee of staffing council working on looking over bids for the request for proposals for visioning consultants met for the first time. So we're not done yet, so we'll be reporting on that, but lots of interesting proposals there from people. On the 21st of September, we had our regular EMS board meeting, and let's see, I know Joette was here earlier talking about the Canyon Islands Healthcare Special Service District, and Tawny serves on that. So yes, we spent part of our meeting discussing just going the Grand County Commission and kind of their decision-making process for money and what role the hospital might play in sales tax money. So we spent some time on that. Let's see. In terms of trends going on, not to make it too long, but we had been slowing down a little bit in the heat of summer, and that continued in August, but we think it's picking up in September. So anyway, so far, kind of year to date, we're about 20% over our numbers in 2020. But they did notice, and I don't know if we know why this is, but we've been seeing a higher acuity of patients this month, and I guess just multiple serious trauma, strokes, and unfortunately, some responses in the last few months to suicide attempts. So always very hard, especially if you know the family involved. We got a good report on how COVID affected the department, and just how we foresee some of that going as things move ahead. And we talked a little bit about hospitals. They were noting that ICU transmissions have been going down, but you always wonder about the busyness of the ICUs. Is it COVID? Is it what? But I think a lot of us at this point, but in case it's helpful, have heard, part of what we're all experiencing is a shortage in staffing and bed numbers at certain hospitals. But also, it sounds like right now it isn't necessarily always so much COVID, but you've got a lot of things going on, other traumas, I guess RCV, the respiratory, I can never pronounce this, but syncytial virus that a lot of kids get.
Syncytial.
Thank you. Couldn't pronounce that one. And I don't know if there was anything else necessarily of note to say there. Let's see. And then just thanks to the Festival of Science folks, and now with the city,
I can't believe
events.
I forgot.
No. I know everybody went to other exciting things. So I know I just, went to the presentation on the Pat Creek Fire, very interesting, some good numbers and little factoids to note there. And I just, hopefully they have saved on tape some of these presentations, because the keynote with Dr. Catherine Hayhoe about climate change was quite good. And I think I may leave next week and become a lichenologist, because looking at lichens was so exciting, I don't know what to do with myself. And luckily, I'm slower these days, but so are lichens. And the only other thing I was going to say is I did email the other council, because I was kind of interested in going to the CAST meeting in Park City, but I know Kaylin's kind of our rep, so I was just going to see if other folks were interested in going. Yeah.
It's a great
Okay.
meeting to go to.
Yeah.
It's a great community. There's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
And both of you going is,
So I also was hoping to be able to attend. There's the electric bus tour. There's ADUs in action. There is, and the Mountain Towns 2030 is happening on the Wednesday before.
And sorry to
the
folks listening
official-
for using an acronym. CAST is the Colorado Association of Ski Towns, but it's beyond Colorado. And even though we're not a ski town, we share a lot of the same housing and other tourism and other issues, so.
Yep.
absolutely great conference to go to.
Yeah, I think it's relatively affordable, and I think anyone who wants to go should go.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think if there are more than 2 of us, then we'll just, we'll make sure it gets posted that we're at a meeting.
I don't know that you have to
You don't have to
post
post
Okay.
it. It's
Not,
just,
we're not convening the meeting, we're not deliberating, we're not
Yeah.
that's right.
doing city
Okay.
business.
Well, anyway, if anyone didn't know, it's been so long since I've done any travel for the city, just get in touch with Kelly. So, that was it.
Thank you, and thanks for remembering the Festival of Science. I cannot believe I didn't. We had so much fun. They're amazing. Thank you for mentioning them. Tony?
Oh, I threw my back out the other day, so I'm not been a very happy camper. And I'm still bending and stepping, still hurt. I did go to the museum board meeting, and we spent a good half an hour with some board agreements. Went through a lot of topics about how we talk to each other and how we collaborate with each other and what we owe each other as board members. It was very interesting. The museum has proposed 2 new positions. One is the history programs manager, which is a full-time position, and the other one is the membership and development assistant, which is a part-time position. So that will be a good addition to the museum staff, because like everybody else, they are short-staffed and wearing a lot of hats. The 15th of October, there will be an installation of Casina dolls that are carved by members of the Hopi tribe, and it will be open to the public, and they will have carvers there intermittently. The first carver will be there the end of the week of October 16th, and I think some are still to be determined. It will just depend on people's schedules, but I thought that was a pretty interesting installation that the museum will have. And museum staff met with the school district to see if they could refocus some of the faculty on the way that they interact with the museum staff, just to see if they can reset some of those priorities and how teachers view the programs. That was about it for the museum. And I went to the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District. I won't spend a lot of time because we spent a good deal of time talking about the presentation that you saw tonight and how the county allocates the money and possible changes that they are making. Most of the rest of it was the nursing reports, and like Colette said, they're one of 2 facilities that haven't had COVID among long-term care residents, so that is good. And they are working on their upcoming financial audit. And that, I do believe, is it. Oh, I did an interview with a reporter from the Deseret News, and he talked to me for 40 minutes and used 1 sentence.
Thank you for inviting them to speak tonight.
Yeah.
And coordinating that. Thank you. Karen?
I had a chamber meeting, and the chamber held their first luncheon since the onset of COVID-19 last week at Lions Park. And there was about 30 businesses that showed up, so that was good. Patty Trapp came to hear from businesses and to answer questions and address concerns about the reservation or timed entry system. The next luncheon will be held this coming month, and the discussion that is being thrown around is ranked choice voting, and or perhaps a discussion on behavioral health for employers and employees. And I don't know if there's someone from the city who would be interested in, or from Utah. What is the Utah County, who I don't know if they'd be interested in coming and speaking at a chamber luncheon to discuss how ranked choice voting works. But I'll get in touch with you guys.
Yeah.
There is a board seat open on the chamber, and they're going to be interviewing candidates for treasurer. And also coming this month, there are nominations for Business of the Year and Citizens of the Year will be up for nominations. I also went with Ronnie. We had a Walnut Lane tour with Ben.
How'd I forget that? That's great.
And Levi and Barry, and I thank you guys very much. That was very eye-opening. And a special thanks to Bonnie and Jared and Larry for all the work and cleanup that they have been doing on the property down there. It's there's a lot of work to be done, and they have done so much already. So really, thank you. That was very good to see in person. And that is it for me.
Thanks, Karen.
I attended a Solid Waste Special Service District Board meeting. We spent a fair amount of time talking about internal financial controls. And we're going to have a second Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day at the Recycling Center on November 6th.
Is that like pills, or is that like bleach?
It's like bleach. It's not pharmaceuticals.
Okay.
Paint thinners, paints, liquid paints, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But if it helps you, I think you can always take pharmaceuticals to the sheriff. They have I think a secure drop box still.
And then we spent some time talking about coordination with special events and maybe doing better outreach and engagement with the participants, and regarding separating recyclables from trash, and just having more of the recyclable materials that are generated at those events end up in the recycling instead of just commingled with the general waste. But I think everyone's a little short of time, so that will to be worked on in the future. And then attended a couple of other things that other council members have already talked about, so that's it for me.
Thank you, Kaylin. Thank you, council, for all you do in the community. Where are we on our agenda? Sorry. We are now at the approval of minutes. Agenda item number 881 for September 14th, 2021. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Ronnie. Is there a second?
I will second.
Oh, I think that I heard Mike the loudest, so I will take Mike's second. Discussion?
Thanks, Summer, for dealing with my edits.
Call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Now we're on to special events, section 9. 9.1, special event permit application for Grand County Family Support Center's trunk or treat. The agenda says trunk of treat, and I just caught that.
Does it really?
It does. Oh. Briefing and possible action. It's funny because the R and the F, I do that a lot. The F instead of or. Anyway, trunk or treat. Kelly, thank you so much for working with the applicant. This is a new location, and so thank you so much for gathering the information so that the council can make this decision tonight. And thanks for being here to answer questions and perhaps just give a quick summary of the event.
Of course. Yeah, and thank you, Mike and Ronnie, for your questions. So there is something a little bit that has changed from this original application on here. So I'll mention that now. But this is a community, family-friendly, Halloween-themed free event. And it has been done in the area before, just not in the city in Aswani Park. So the number of participants has changed from the original application. It said about 3,000, but their information thinks that it'll be closer to 1,000 or 1,500. And then for the vehicles, in the past, they've had about 40 vehicles participate as the trunks that are visited by the participants. So, excuse me. We have talked about a couple of important items for them, and they will be providing portable restrooms so that the park bathrooms aren't overwhelmed. And then they can use the parking lots on HMK, and then a couple of the church lots on 400 North. And then they have also have some volunteers that will help with crossing the street, helping the families cross the street so that they can make sure the attendees are safely participating in the event as well. So, are there any other questions?
And it does look like some folks from Trunk or Treat are here in case the council has further questions for them as well. We did invite them to be here in case there are questions. Who's first? Ronnie.
No, me.
Kalen is ready to go.
Kalen's
He needs candy.
So there's been some concern about too many vehicles parking on city park turf. And so I'm wondering but I realize that the turf will tolerate some parking. So I'm wondering if staff has any opinion about how much vehicle traffic can be tolerated on the turf.
Right, so there's a couple points there, and it's later in the season. So in peak summer, when the grass is being watered more, it's a little bit more sensitive to that. But now that we're later in the season, it's being watered less, and so it's less of an issue than, say, if this were a July event. The second thing would be the cars being parked is a lot less damage than just them driving around. So once they're parked, they're there for about 3 hours, and then they'll leave. And the sprinklers would be marked, and all the vehicles would have a designated space so that we could avoid potential damage to the sprinklers in the field.
Okay, thanks.
Kelly, I was just wondering if if the discussion happened that, the cars could park just in the designated parking areas around the park, and then just the kids could use the whole grass area just to visit the trunks. Is that?
I had kind of wondered that too, like you park trunk in and you walk on the grass and the weight of the vehicles isn't on there. I mean, it's a great event, and I participated before, and I encourage anyone to bring a car and fill a trunk, because decorating is fun and seeing all the costumes is great. And my other concern is that we had a resident raise the issue that, it says in our code we aren't supposed to be allowing vehicles on the grass unless it's for a car show. So it does seem like fair to the community that we either follow our own code or we change our code, but it does seem kind of hypocritical if we aren't following our own codes. I wanted to check in, yeah.
That could be a question that we could ask the applicant if you want.
Right, I did want a clarification on that. So instead of having the trunks facing the street, they'd be facing the park, so that the children are still kind of walking in the park? Okay.
Yeah, and then, the haunted house would be in the center of the park area, and then the kids would just be, using the park. Yes.
Okay. Yes, that's something that we could.
That just seems like an easy fix, and there's no cars on the park grass.
The only thing that you run into is there is a curb around there, and you're going to have costumes and kids and, tripping and falling. That would be my only concern. If you could make sure that the vehicles are pulled up close enough that kids aren't tripping over that curb.
And you are allowed to approve it with a condition. So you can make a parking limitation, for example, and if you want to specify that the parking of the cars is at a certain place, that's something you are allowed to do. That's concurrent with.
You could also allow them to, instead of angle, back up, like use chalk to back up instead of angle. But maybe we should hear from the applicants if that's something that they would be interested with amendment, or if that would make them look elsewhere for another venue.
Yeah, can we ask an added question to that? Because I know part of their concern was enough space for emergency vehicles who are larger, and they were planning to put those on the pavement. And I noticed in the 9/11 event, the emergency vehicles were on the grass. So anyway, I was just trying to, I'm not sure how much the parking slots can accommodate.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the point of that, I think, from what I understood at that event, was that we wanted our first responders, we wanted interaction with their vehicles so that people could see what, it was kind of a demonstration, if you will, of the vehicles. But I know it's scary, but would someone from Trunk or Treat like to come up and speak on behalf of the event? It's so scary, but we'll be nice, we promise. Thank you. Hi. Thanks for being here tonight and being here to answer these questions. So the first question is, I suppose, what are your thoughts on restructuring the parking so that vehicles are not in the grass?
That was actually the original plan, was to just go around the park instead of having parks pull onto the grass. So we're very open to that, yes.
Wonderful. Okay. And the permission to, if you choose to park perpendicular instead of angled, would also be okay if they chose to do that to avoid the lip dip.
Yeah.
And then if we grant them permission, I think it would be streets to close off the parking in anticipation of the event that day. So, okay.
Because I think, my personal opinion is the only place that's really going to get beat down is a couple thousand people all walking down the same path all night long. So if you could park the cars maybe facing out so that most of your pedestrians are on the concrete path, I guess is what I'm trying to say. In other words,
in the street?
Here's the edge of,
No.
here's
No. I think that's a good idea.
First west, for example, and fourth north this way. So if you had the back of the car, the back of the car facing the sidewalk out here, and then all the people could walk down the sidewalk and then down that way. And that would keep the vast majority of the foot traffic off the grass.
Close the sidewalk away from the grass.
Well, it just depends on which side, because there's not sidewalk on the south side or the west side through the whole thing.
But you're asking to close Park Drive, right?
So.
No.
Park.
North Park Ave would be open, and West Park Drive would be closed, and that's the one by Turner Lumber where there's no residences.
Right.
I mean, so couldn't we put the emergency vehicles in the
On the
middle of the
road.
street and then?
Would that be?
Is there enough
Yes.
room on West Park Drive?
Okay.
What we've always tried to do, even when we had it out at the arena, was make sure the emergency vehicles were where they could exit if they had to.
Oh, right.
And so we thought if we didn't, you wouldn't really have to, well, yeah, you would block it off, but it wouldn't block any traffic because it's between Turner Lumber and the park. So there's just that street right there.
Right.
That you'd block off. Well, there's lots of ways around it. So it wouldn't be blocking or restricting any traffic.
Let's be clear what the street name is, so it's, because I think that this will be part of the motion, so it is.
West Park
West
Drive is on the south side of Swanee Park, and that's the requested street closure.
And it's in there, so actually the motion wouldn't have to include it, or?
Oh, that's in the event application.
Yes.
So it wouldn't be an amendment to the application?
No.
Okay, then never mind about the street name.
Mayor, can I make a motion?
Yes, just one sec though. Was there anything else that you wanted to share with council about the event?
No, that was it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You don't have to sit in the hot seat anymore.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and on behalf of Tusher, Walker, and all of the homes that actually make sure they have 3,000 pieces of candy, thank you for helping to disperse. I am very grateful. I like this location because it will help disperse away from the mayhem that is my neighborhood.
And I also, that we didn't do it last year because of COVID, and
Right.
you wouldn't believe the disappointed phone calls we got over it. So we thought,
I
well,
would
we'll go ahead
believe
and
it.
try it this year. But it fell on a Sunday, and
Yeah.
so many people said they wasn't interested in Sunday, and we couldn't get the county, the
Spanish
arena was booked for Saturday, Friday and Saturday. So we thought, well, we can try it this way and see what happens. So that's how we thought we're going to do it this year. No
You're
matter
going to
what
do it
for
on
their
Sunday?
Moab kids.
On
No,
Halloween?
Saturday.
You're doing
No.
Saturday?
Yeah, we
Okay.
opted
That's-
out of the Sunday.
Okay.
You still need more cars to sign up?
Yes, oh yes, lots more cars, yes. We still haven't heard from the Moab Police Department here, so.
Oh,
No, I remember, I only went once out by the arena. And I remember the rule of thumb was bring 1,000 pieces of candy. And I'm thinking, what? And ruin every kid's teeth in town? And we gave it all away. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
About 2,200.
I know, it was unbelievable.
Wow.
It's a great event, okay?
So I move to approve a special event license for 2021 Trunk or Treat event to be held at the city of Moab, in the city of Moab at Swanee Park.
Wait. With the amendment to the application?
With the amendment to move the parking in the parking stalls.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded. Thank you, Tani. Discussion. Is that motion clear? Yeah. Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Let them eat candy.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you, Kelly. Thank you so much. Where are we? Okay, we are now into old business. Agenda item 10.1, dispersed parking cooperative agreement with UDOT. Chuck's here to answer any questions. We have had many meetings on this. I'm happy to entertain a motion or further discussion or questions if needed.
I move to approve the dispersed parking cooperative agreement with UDOT and authorize the mayor to sign it.
Thank you, Kaylin. Is there a second?
I'd second.
Thank you, Karen. Discussion or questions? Yes, Ronnie?
I just had a question for colleagues because when we last discussed this, I mean, it came up, I think on the 24th of August in that meeting, I was listening to the recording again. I was asking Joel for clarity because I said, I understand we're working on the budget. This is in the budget, but, you know, I have some recollection from the past that when we talked about dispersed parking and paving, the $400,000 that the city would have to pay to pave Emma and Minnie Lee, that we would be coming back to that because we didn't know that we would have the money or that would be a priority. And at the time, it was a relatively low priority on our capital improvements project list. And so he said, yeah, this will come before you again. And so I'm just a little bit confused because it seems like, you know, it's all written into the agreement and it's ready to go. So I guess and I may well have been out to lunch, but did I miss a discussion about whether we had the money? I mean, I understand it's in the budget, but I thought we were going to have another discussion, but I may be the only one who was expecting that to happen.
Who would like to answer that question from staff?
No, it's actually a question for other council members.
Well, the first
Yeah.
question is, let's just verify what you're saying in terms of money is in the budget.
Yeah.
And it is staff's understanding that it has been approved de facto in the budget for this work on Emma.
And yes,
So,
then and before then.
so Ronnie then is asking council, was that your understanding in passing the budget that you were also saying yes to the improvements of Emma?
Yes.
Paving?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I will just say for myself, yes, this has had a long history with the loss of parking slots for nearby businesses and another long and convoluted history, which we have spoken of before with Emma. And so I understand the benefits to those businesses who lost parking, but I also understand that this is $400,000. So I'll just say I find either way there are winners and losers. That's my comment.
Thank you for the comment. You're right, it has been, we've been talking about this for a really long time, and I'm grateful that this cooperative agreement is in front of us to move forward. And let's stick to it. Let's stick to this one. And I'll entertain a motion.
Wait, there is a motion.
Oh, I would entertain,
Well,
what am I doing now?
I'd like to just ask
Discussion?
Chuck a
Yes.
question.
Sorry.
So I was under the impression that there would be another design stage that would go to an outside consultant, but I don't see that budgeted for in the project. Is that in the city's annual budget, or?
It's in the contingency budget.
Okay.
In fact, I have a preliminary scope and fee ready in case council approves this, that we'll come back in 2 weeks and run that scope and fee by you, because we'll need council approval. And I'll make sure you get it in, it's a, real quick, it's a engineering, landscape architect, street light, public engagement type contract because we'll need all of that.
Yeah, sounds great.
Ronnie, perhaps that's more of where you were coming from. Because understanding that there's that there's more conversation about it is happening.
Well, and I'll just say that I remember I had a question too about the timing on some of the cost share on this project, and that some of it wasn't going to be in the 21-22 budget just because it wouldn't be constructed in the next fiscal year.
Well, there's that, yeah. Okay, well, it feels good to have clarity tonight. Okay, any other discussion? Is there any other discussion for this item? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion, was that 4 yeses and 1 no? Motion passes with 4 ayes and 1 no. And 10-2, the Transit Pilot Cooperative Agreement with UDOT. Again, just kind of following up with what we've been doing. I would entertain a motion or discussion.
I will so move to approve the Transit Pilot Cooperative Agreement with UDOT and authorize the mayor to sign it.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I would second.
Thank you, Karen. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Chuck, for being available for those agenda items.
You're welcome.
Have a good night. New business. 11-1, proposed resolution 30-21, 2021, a resolution approving the lot line adjustment of property located at 374 West, 200 South, and 396 West, 200 Moab, Utah 84532. I don't think a presentation is needed, and so I would entertain a motion.
I'll move that the council approve City Resolution 30-2021, a resolution approving the lot line adjustment of property located at 374 West 200 South and 396 West 200 South.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Second.
Thank you, Kaylin. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. But don't you leave yet, Nora. 11-2, proposed ordinance 2021-12, an ordinance amending the text of the Moab Municipal Code to add regulation for brew pubs, breweries, and distilleries by amending sections 17.06, definition 17.21.020, C2 commercial residential zone, 17.24.020, C3 commercial zone, C3 Central Commercial Zone, the 17.27.020 C4 General Commercial Zone, 17.31.020 RC Resort Commercial Zone, and 17.36.020 Industrial Zone. There was some discussion about some details of this And so, Nora, I don't know if you want to speak first to it or if you want to entertain questions or comments.
Let me just make a sort of preliminary comment. We did talk about the C2 with the Planning Commission, although not in great detail. And I personally don't have any problem taking that out or not allowing brew pubs in the C2 if you so desire. Today I sent out, I know it was really small, but I sent out a map with all the C2 highlighted so that you could see exactly where that is. And I don't know if that was helpful at all, but you know, whichever way you want to go is fine with me.
One easy question for you, Nora, if I may.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
C2, as Caitlin points out, C2 limits business sizes to 2,000 square feet or something like
Yeah,
that.
to sizes.
So
right.
if we incorporate brew pubs and, what was it, distilleries in there? Brew pubs, and there was a second category as well. But the way the language is written now,
yeah.
would those in C2, would they also be, by default, be restricted to 2,000 square feet, or could they be any size?
That's not something that we specifically talked about. I think because of the way the code is written, that they would be subject to the size limitations. And we could make that clarifying language if you wish.
But they're defined as a separate use. I mean.
Right.
So
we should probably list them as a separate use.
So I was prepared to make a motion approving it, but where it says add brew pubs as permitted use in the C2 commercial residential, limited to 2,200 square feet, and C3 blah, blah, blah. So I was thinking of making it slightly larger than a restaurant because they would have to have the brewing facility as well.
Yeah.
Whereas a restaurant could just be, minimize their kitchen space.
Right.
So
So
if
that was my
somebody were to
inclination.
get a permit, would they get 2 permits?
No, I think they could just be permitted as a brew pub.
Yeah.
But then if they, well, hold on. So they have their like brewing zone, and then if they also have like a restaurant area.
Well, but that's
And
all.
I think of like the brewery, and it's way bigger than 2,200.
Well, my intention is to make it consistent with the existing limitations on restaurants in C2, that it would be modest in size.
Oh, so only for C2 would it be 22?
Yes.
Got it. And your motion would reflect that?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead, Ronnie.
Nora, first one, it might be a minor question. I don't know if it matters. In our agenda summary, we talk about micro distilleries, but when we get into the resolution, we just call them distilleries. Does it matter if it's the same or not? I didn't know how micro we need to be.
A distillery, 15,000 gallons per year of beverages on site, including a tasting room in which guests and customers may sample the project. That is in effect a micro distillery, I think.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm only asking because in the agenda summary, when it gives the definitions we're going to add, it lists micro distillery, and when we get to the resolution, we just refer to distillery. So I didn't know if it mattered that it was missing the micro part.
Yeah, that's true. We could eliminate the micro distillery if we wish and just, well, one's 10,000.
Because the definition seems to be the same, the term just seems to be different.
Yeah. So let me see. We regulate it and call it a distillery. Is that correct? Yeah. All right. So
okay. As long as it says what you think it's supposed to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that we could delete the micro distillery definition because it's basically covered under brewery. We're talking distillery, I'm sorry. Distillery. So we could delete the definition of microbrewery. Or microdistillery, I'm sorry, microdistillery, and just leave distillery. That would be consistent with the language in the staff report. I apologize.
Okay.
So the motion would need to reflect that change as well.
And I just had a few things to say about the C2. I feel pretty strongly about the C2. We have very little C1 left in the city, and it was supposed to be our buffer between residents and commercial. So effectively, in many cases, that's what the C2 has become in some places. And in our packet, it says that the Planning Commission decided not to include the C5 because it seemed inconsistent with the residences around it. So I looked at the 2 polygons we have of C5. And granted, I wasn't on a satellite map the whole time, so some of these might be lots and not necessarily homes, but I'm pretty sure they aren't commercial. So as far as I could tell, with the 2 polygons of C5, they had 42 homes around that. So I thought, okay, well, the Planning Commission considered it, maybe not a consistent use with those neighbors. And then I looked at the 6 polygons of C2, which, as far as I can tell, probably have about 90 homes around them. To me, if it's inconsistent in the C5, inappropriate, it's also inappropriate in those places in the C2. I mean, if we think about some of the conflict that we've seen, especially with overnight rentals, some of the guests and residents, and sometimes lack or difficulty of code enforcement, I just feel like potentially putting a place that might be noisy or have late hours, especially where alcohol is involved, is a bad idea, especially at a time when residents are asking us to focus on the resident. And I understand alcohol establishments probably going to have a mixed use of tourists and residents, but to me, that C2 has kind of become closer to a buffer, and I don't feel responsible putting breweries right next to homes like that, especially when the numbers seem to be that high. So the C2 is a deal breaker for me, unless someone wants to really break it into pieces and say, we'll allow it in the C2, but not when it's adjacent to residents. So in those places where it's adjacent to other commercial, but
where is that? Where are those locations? Because it seems like the map that shows.
I had to go into the city map. I had to blow it up and put the satellite on and look at where commercial is adjacent, where homes are adjacent.
It seems like everywhere a home is adjacent in the C2.
Yeah, there probably are some places where, there might be some places where it butts up against the C3. I can't remember.
There is, like behind on Emma, but then it's right next to a school, and I don't think you're allowed to have a brewery
I don't know
next
about
to a
alcohol next to a
church or a school,
but I can't remember. That's more a question for the DABC and not us, but.
But I think better would be to, if that's your inclination, to instead, I would encourage your motion to exclude it from the C2.
I completely agree with Ronnie.
Well, so we've got kind of 2 working ideas on the table. Are there issues regarding the C2, but are there issues with other zones?
C5, I didn't find it, and we didn't.
It's not in the ordinance, and we only have 2 wee bits. If you think about 400 East where Milts is, that's C5, kind of in that area. And we have a little bit of C5, just north of that where the hair cutting salon is. And the kombucha place.
Yeah, there's a little pocket of C5 right there with Milts in the store and those 2 office buildings, and so that's all C5.
Is that the only C5?
I think just those 2 polygons, unless, you would know.
I mean, that is directly in my hood, and I'm not going to lie. I love Milts. I love the little shop that opened up. I would not be personally opposed to it along 400 East. But I don't get to vote, but I just want to give that opinion as a resident that would be quite close to that. I love that area of 4th East is such a local place, even though lots of people that are visiting go to Milts as well, and there's always cars parked all over the place. I love it. So I'm not totally opposed to that, but.
Getting a shot in a milkshake?
I mean, peach milkshake and walk down the street. I hadn't thought about that.
Are you talking
Karen,
about alcohol or your COVID shot?
There's yes.
There is something to be said for the neighborhood bar. Stumbling distance.
The neighborhood bar. Right.
So Emily, you're advocating that you do not want the brew pubs in C5?
I'm saying I would not have a problem with this added to C5. I think it's.
Added to C5.
To me, it would be okay. And that's like literally, what, 7 doors, 6 doors away from me.
Okay. Well, let me offer,
But-
yeah, I'm sorry.
But you know, it is residential right behind it.
Nora, and I'm sorry, you guys, but because we have the charter school right there, and then we also have the high school. So, I mean, if there is a restriction on getting a license, I mean, it would be, I don't know what that.
All the way up though, like C5, it'll extend up to Elks Lodge. And how far does it go? I mean.
It goes up to Western Spirit and includes Western Spirit. You guys did that, go up Mill Creek.
Oh, up Mill Creek.
Yeah.
You're talking about though by the charter school, like Fourth East.
Yeah, this would be right, that's, the C5 is right across the street.
I mean, does anyone?
But then it keeps going north, how far?
North.
A block and a half.
Yeah, block
There's
and a
like
half.
the yellow house that's
Beer
for
Shite
sale
building.
and the Beer Shite building. And then
And
past the Beer
that
Shite
little
building is
store, right.
a residential that's C5, and then keep going, there's a couple more residentials that are C5.
There's the school offices.
School
And the
offices,
school
right.
offices, what a conversion that would be.
So one observation I have, 2,000
New
square
business
feet, by the
type.
way, is roughly, by my eyeball, the size of this room. I mean, for example, 30 feet by, 20 feet by 100 feet. Yeah, 2,000 square feet. So I mean, it gives you some idea. This room may be a little bit bigger than that. So it's not a huge restaurant, but not tiny either.
And they would still be held to the noise ordinance. They would still be held to,
Nuisance.
I don't know. So I want to thank Ronnie. I mean, a little further discussion. I remember when all the overnight rentals hit, you know, when that area got rezoned to be commercial. C2, I'm talking about C2 now. I'm sorry, talking about, yeah, C2.
yeah, C2.
A lot of people that were living over there were not happy with the commercial nature of it. So let me ask, my question for council, I guess, is, and this applies to C5 too. Do you think of brew pubs as being an amenity that's largely enjoyed by residents here, or do you think it as an amenity largely enjoyed by visitors? Because if you think it's the latter, then it really doesn't belong in C5, because C5 expressly says it's supposed to be for amenities that are intended for residents
question.
here.
Well, C5 currently allows eating establishments without, at least as listed in the uses, with no size limit.
Yep.
So currently, eating establishments in C5 is less restrictive than in C2. And just, I'm okay either way. I'm not particularly attached. I am attached to moving through this relatively quickly.
I'd be inclined to remove C2 and C5 out of this.
And C5's not even in it currently, so.
Oh, okay.
So Nora, could they be added later on if we so wish?
Do a code amendment and decide to put it back in if we need to.
All right, well, is there a motion?
I can make a motion. Let's see. Oh, do I have a motion? Oh, okay. Well, I move to approve, and I'm going to alter it, Ordinance 2021-12, an ordinance amending the text of the Moab Municipal Code to add regulations for brew pubs, breweries, and distilleries by amending Section 1706, definitions, 1721-20. Oh, no, I don't want that one. Sorry, that's the C2. I want to take that one out. And then 1724-20, the C3 Central Commercial Zone, 1727-20, the C4 General Commercial Zone, 1731-20, the RC Commercial Zone, and 1736-20, the Industrial Zone. So basically, as written in our packet, except for my motion leaves out the C2.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Second.
Thank you, Karen.
Does that
Discussion?
include the removal of micro distillery?
Oh, well, you know, I think you're probably okay there because I think in the agenda summary it mentions micro distilleries, but I think in the main part of the packet it refers to them as distilleries, or did I just pull a dyslexic there?
I think that
Yeah.
the micro distillery is probably a leftover from a staff report before we had decided on the definitions.
Okay, I mean, I'll double check here, but
I gave the planning commission a number of different definitions for different things and had them pick.
Okay. I'll double check and look here in case because I do tend to mix these things sideways. Sorry, I'm scrolling. Okay.
If Karen's okay with a friendly amendment, you could also just add to the motion to specifically include.
Actually, the way it's drafted.
I did check it. I think it just says distillery, so I think you're okay.
It does, yes.
Yeah.
And you don't want to include the micro, because that doesn't matter.
Yeah, and it's not in here anyway. It was just in the agenda summary.
So you want to keep your motion as is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
And ADUs are on their way at your next meeting.
Yay! Gonna be a big one.
It is a big one.
That's very exciting. Okay, we're moving right along. I am suffering here from eyes. 11.3, proposed ordinance 2021-17, an ordinance amending the City of Moab Municipal Code, Title II, Chapter 28, Purchasing Procedures. Ben, thank you for working up this summary, agenda summary, and working through this issue.
Yeah, happy to.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to say a few things before I
Yeah,
ask for a
so
motion.
it's fairly typical to allow for exceptions for professional service contracts for two reasons. Immediate need is one, and the additional is similar to a single source provider, where you're seeking out services that are very specific, and you want to be able to use judgment to contract with the best service provider available. In the case of legal services, you can understand why that's extremely important. So both expediency and technical knowledge.
And can you speak to the way in which other municipalities do this? Is this similar? How is this proposed ordinance similar to how everyone else does it?
This is even more narrow than other municipalities, so we only called out legal services in this proposal. It's very typical to include many other technical services in procurement exceptions. I reviewed a handful of municipalities from Salt Lake City, Orem, Provo, St. George, Hurricane, all of which had exceptions for technical services, and I pulled from those to create this language.
Thank you so much. Council, questions or motion?
I do have a question. So all I know is when I read the Tribune, Salt Lake paper, and I read the history of Utah, I mean, it's pretty rife with corruption at times. And to its credit, the state has made much progress in recent decades. So I guess my question for you, Ben, is there any realistic chance, or has there been any examples of the sort of freedom that this sort of arrangement provides municipality has ever been abused? Because, I mean, occasionally you read about, a city did this and that, and then you think, oh, this is kind of under the cover, somebody's transferring money. Is that
I think it's important to note that this doesn't override any budgetary spending authority. So, we budget for professional and technical services by department, and this would fall under that. I would say there's not a lot of exposure here for improper behavior.
Were you talking about favoritism, or were you talking about
No, I'm
overspending?
just trying to, I'm trying to make sure we're all on the up and up here, that's all. Not that I'm doubting anybody, I'm just, where there's will, there's a way. I mean, no, I don't mean that. That's the wrong thing to say.
I think that's the wrong
No, what I'm
phrase.
saying, well, and I'm not saying this either, what's the old saying? Absolute power corrupts, you know what I mean? I mean, we go through all this training about checks and balances and separation of duties and all, and this is kind of a, not here, kind of thing. And I can see why it's a great freedom to have as long as you use it responsibly.
Right. I mean, the purpose for a procurement process in state code and city code is to allow for bidding and openness. So it makes sense that the question is asked, but as I said, it's typically very specific services that are being contracted for here.
Okay, thank you.
There are some that aren't, they aren't conducive to a competitive bid process, and that's why they are usually exempted, because it's this specialty of expertise that you need, and you need it quickly, and you need to be able to be nimble and flexible as things are unfolding. Like, for example, with a lawyer, if you wanted to fire your lawyer mid-litigation and wanted a new one, you don't want to be tied down because you realize you have a month of bidding to do, right? So it's because of the type of the service that the flexibility is usually acknowledged. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question kind of drawing off Mike's question because I have similar concerns. So for example, we have things built into our procurement policy to make sure that, even if we're making smaller purchases from the same provider over time, it doesn't add up and exceed, right, our maximum. So I guess my question would be, are those, there are big enough law firms that they might specialize in 6 different areas, and a city might ostensibly have legal needs in those 6 areas. So are the protections still there that you don't run the risk of, using that same firm enough that you're exceeding what you would want to be spending because you're maybe spending a certain amount with them in this department and a certain amount in this department? And so just remind me how our procurement policy works. If that all added up above, the tipping point in our procurement policy where we're supposed to be doing other things, would that tip it, or it only gets tipped if we spend, do 3 jobs with them in the same department? Do you understand what I'm saying? If I used them for engineering and I used them, for legal, and I used them for, water or something.
Yeah, so this is a full exception to the purchasing policy. So, and
those thresholds.
And an important reason to remember that, to do that, is for that reason, because a single attorney could be used across multiple departments. These are also multi-year contracts. So if you have a 5-year contract and you're spending, say, $10,000 a year annually, it's pretty easy to exceed that $50,000 over the term of that contract plus renewal periods.
There's also a problem with uncertainty. So going out, the way it's written now is we would tend to want to go out to bid for every single thing because we don't know what kind of legal exposure we necessarily have at the beginning. So if we had a litigation, is it going to cost $25,000, $5,000, $50,000, what does it look like? So at the outset, it's very cumbersome because we can't use those really nimble tools that we have because we're worried about bumping up against procurement. And so I guess the check for you is, of course, your budget, which is, administration can spend this amount on legal fees, and then the city manager and the administration would be using their discretion to spend that as wisely as possible. And usually the other check is that legal services go through one person, that there's one point of contact who's keeping track of all the expenses. So it's not, engineering who are acquiring their own attorney, or communication. It's just the city manager, which is what I think it outlines, who is doing that work.
Okay, I guess my final question is, are legal services kind of viewed ever similarly to accounting? When you hire a firm to do your audit and they tell you, okay, well, best practice says that you should probably switch auditors every 3 to 5 years. So is there anything like that in the legal world? Do you ever run the same kind of risk that advises you to change auditors or not? I've always taken it that the risk with auditors is kind of maybe there's a little bit of a concern that at some point they'll start telling you what you want to hear, right? Yeah. And I didn't know if that happens in the legal world too.
I think it can, and actually that's a reason this is helpful, because you can just say this isn't working anymore. But if you have to go through this cumbersome process to get another one, you might stick with maybe an attorney who services
Definitely.
You just sort of feel saddled with because of it's just so difficult to switch over. So it actually promotes it keeps them more accountable because they know you're free to walk away at any time and able to find other services. And if you just feel the service isn't working anymore, you feel much more at liberty to part ways.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Okay. Is there a motion?
I move to adopt Ordinance 17-2021, amending the city purchasing policy to allow an exception for legal service contracts.
Thank you, Kaylin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Karen. I just want to say thank you for to the two of you for identifying this and for bringing it forward so expeditiously so that we can move forward with the services that we need. Thank you very much. You are a great team working well together under a lot of pressure, and I'm grateful. And this is a good example of that. Thank you.
The credit goes to Ben. He just whipped it around really quick, so.
Well, okay, fine. I won't compliment you.
You don't.
But I want to
I can't give you
anyway,
credit
because I
for
think
it.
you did work together. But yes, thank you. Thank you more to Ben, but to both of you. And any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. 11-4, discussion regarding city attorney replacement. Carly.
Yes, we have, this is a tag team too, because there are two kind of discussions, or parts of the discussion, I think that would be helpful. I know we got a question from Councilmember Duncan about the value of maybe instead of hiring an in-house attorney, of going the contract route, which is what the city had historically done until the past about 2 years. And so it's a good discussion to have, and we have a budget discussion to have about it as well as operational. So Ben has prepared a part of a presentation, and we can go from there. Does that sound good?
Okay.
Okay.
So this is just a quick financial review of legal costs for in-house attorney services as well as contracted attorney services. So there's really 5 components that go into this. There's the legal cost comparison with other cities. I always think that's valuable to see what other cities are doing and why. We have the drivers of legal costs for Moab City specifically, what our current costs were for legal services, having an in-house attorney. The fourth is the current contract attorneys that we have on contract already, and then what it would look like to have a cost of contracted general counsel as a means of comparison. So there are 2 key primary ways to look at other municipalities' costs of attorneys. The first is by population. As we all know, cities with a similar population to Moab operate very differently, function very differently due to our tourism base. So here's a few examples. Midway being probably the most interesting, that given that they're a resort community as well, where they have higher legal costs relative to other cities of approximately 5,000 to 6,000 residents. Here we see that...
What's their visitation number, though?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I don't think it's as high as ours.
Yeah.
They're also not as remote as we are.
So here the bottom note is that 0 out of 4 of those comparison cities have an in-house attorney. So another method of comparison would be by general fund revenue. That's a good comparison to see kind of more similar communities that operate similarly to Moab. So here we have a number, I listed out 7 there, and it's kind of across the board. It's actually rather interesting. These were picked at random, that our legal costs, the average legal costs for those 7 cities is right in line with what our budgeted attorneys' costs are for this fiscal year budget. And it is important to note this does exclude public defender and public prosecutor. So
is that clear to the council what that means?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Across these 7 sample cities, 4 out of 7 staff an in-house attorney. I've been, the last 2 days I've spent at a finance officers conference and have talked to other cities about legal services and what they're doing. It really depends on the workload. A couple that I talked to are in the process of looking at engaging with, bringing that service in-house, because there are a lot of benefits to that, which we'll get to momentarily. So, drivers of legal costs. Moab City is, I've said it before, but is quite unique in a lot of ways. So we have a few specific things where that require a lot of attorney services. They include Walnut Lane, the Hotspot and Transit programs, Wahoo Fund, UTV noise ordinance and speed limits that have occurred. We have rate of development, significantly large developments. A couple of those include Cane Creek Condos, My Place Hotel, Lionsback Resort, Radcliffe. All of these require attorney services, some level of attorney services. Our commercial and residential mix is also quite astounding. We issue 758 business licenses annually. For a city with a population of 5,000, that's incredible. And mitigating the impact of tourism has put additional demand on attorney services. And then all of the other typical services that go along with staffing about 80 full-time employees, police department of 15 officers, planning department, all the grammar requests. There's a lot of work that goes into attorney services is basically what I'm establishing there. So now we look at the total cost of having an in-house attorney, and this is for these are our actual costs that we budgeted for this fiscal year. So just under $200,000 of salaries and benefits. And we have billable hours. So what I tried to do here in this chart, you'll see 60% of the time is dedicated to direct legal work. This is actually working with departments, working with current litigation. So these are estimates. And about 15% of the time would be coordinating legal work with existing contracts. So legal contracts that we have in place with other firms. We have administration time and leave. So this is an approximate mix of the work that's being done. And what that led me to is the total equivalent billable hours. Anybody that's looked over an attorney's invoice, you know that it's all based on billable hours. And so we know that all the work that's done by an in-house attorney would not be considered billable. There's administration time, there's other things that play into that. And so we established the rate of 1,700 billable hours, and that gave us an effective hourly rate of $112 an hour. Any questions about that before I move on? That's kind of a lot to digest. Basically, what I was trying to do was establish that effective hourly rate.
Ben, and I think it would be good to, what are we getting billed at for our contract attorneys?
Yeah, perfect. That's the next slide.
All right.
So, and these vary. I think it's important to note, like Par Brown, they provide multiple services, different levels of staff. A paralegal is going to be billed at a very different rate than a high-cost attorney. These are kind of best. They're not exactly averages, but they're approximates. So, based on the different services that are being provided, you can see there. The average that I used was $265 an hour for contract legal services, which it's important to note doesn't go away by having an in-house attorney. There's a lot of things that these attorneys do for us and did for us while we had that position filled. But again, as you mentioned, like it's this next slide is going to be where we compare the costs of having that existing staff, having that in-house or having it contracted. So with a contracted attorney, I labeled that as general counsel, there's going to be things that are absorbed by existing staff. So we do legal work without attorney review. There's things going on still, even without having an in-house attorney, that we don't shove everything off that she would have done to a contracted attorney. We're absorbing a lot of that work. We're doing all of the coordination work still, and I estimated about a 40-60 split between that we are handling. When I say we, I mean existing staff are taking that on, and then 60% would be handled by a contracted general counsel. So ultimately what this leads to is two numbers there you see at the bottom. Oh, it also is important to note that this is creating at least approximately 700 additional hours of existing staff time. So even though we're contracting stuff out, this is creating an additional burden on existing staff. If we were to contract those services, this service out to a general counsel. So we have two numbers there. The bottom line savings would be $30,000 if you exclude the cost of internal staffing. So if you just say it's a wash, our internal staff costs are a sunk cost if you ignore that additional burden, basically the bottom line would be that the city is saving about $30,000 annually by contracting that out. If you include the cost, the additional burden that's being placed on staff, then that's where you get into it costing more for contracting those general counsel services by about $20,000. So how you want to look at whether it costs the city more or less is whether or not you want to include the additional burden on staff time without having that in-house attorney.
Thanks for breaking that down numerically. I think when we made this pivot a few years ago, we didn't have it broken down in this way. So it's helpful to illustrate by numbers what I think was shared with us when we made the choice to move to an in-house.
Yeah.
So this is just kind of helpful there.
But it seems like the existing staff isn't really a sunk cost, because if they weren't working on these issues, they'd be working on something else. Or if they're working on this, then they're not getting the things done that we or the city want done.
I agree, and I would favor viewing this from the true cost of contracting, that bottom line where it's actually costing more to have that service contracted out.
It's an opportunity cost, right?
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you about, let me use Lori for an example. She's not here to defend herself, and I don't mean her personally, mind you. But, I did, salaried engineering work for a long time, and so my question, to get straight to the point, is, did Lori ever indicate to you, or did anybody ever observe that, I just kind of run out of things to do. I don't know what I'm going to do with my day, kind of thing at $100 an hour.
There's plenty of work, to do, absolutely.
That might factor into your calculation, and presumably a contracted attorney is always going to be, by definition, is always going to be working.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's one complication to your slide. It looks like to me it's kind of a wash.
Yeah.
Well, there's fringe and there's office space too for consideration, but.
I don't know that there's a way to put a cost on this, or if you guys are comfortable answering this, but or maybe those of you who've been in the law or the management side of municipal stuff can tell me this. Is there any, every situation could be different, but is there any kind of generalization that one could say about speed of response or accessibility? Like, is there some cost you can put on that if you have someone right here that you can go to versus going to the firm? I guess I'm never sure when you're contracting, is it kind of like your contracting attorney is doing triage and they will, take your work as soon as possible, but they kind of have to, gauge, what their bigger cases are. So are there some advantages in that sense to have it in-house, or not really, for pros and cons?
Yeah, we've kind of tried to break it out a little bit, because there's a budget question and there's an operational question, right? And sometimes they're intertwined and they play off each other, definitely. And I tried to sort of just capture the benefits of in-house versus contract. They both have benefits and they both have costs. No matter what, we will be contracting for specialized legal services, depending on, if we get an in-house, they can't do possibly every single thing, and they won't be an expert in every single subject matter. But, just generally, it is just operationally easier to have someone in the building who's here, who knows the whole history of what you're talking about, who's living in the community. It's easy just to call them down for a meeting. A contract attorney, they're very responsive, but you have no managerial control over them. So they're taking vacation maybe without maybe your permission, because they don't need it. You're not their boss. They have other clients, many other clients. and you're but one of dozens of clients. So you can talk about priorities in terms of what you want that's most important for your work, but it doesn't mean that you are the priority of that week or that day.
And
So
we
you're-
have a non-compete or non-take-out other job clause?
If we
'Cause I
wanted to
think
hire
they're-
them just exclusively as a
If we were
contract.
hiring an in-house, would
Yeah.
that be their contract?
Yes, the in-house would be exclusive to, Lori did not work for anybody else. She was just our attorney.
And that was in her contract?
Yes, yeah.
And
you
that
can
would
have
be in
non-compete.
this contract as well?
Oh, of course, yeah. Absolutely.
that's
But we wouldn't have that with
a benefit,
another
for
kind
sure.
of contract, a firm, of course. So we're paying like the same amount of, it's comparable, the costs are comparable, but we get 100% of the in-house, their attention, and we're going to be paying the same amount for this much attention from the contract attorney. So, we can read those costs and benefits. The city made the contract work for a long time, and especially with like this new procurement, it makes it easier for us to just sort of go and find the specialized need that we have. But it does make it hard to manage multiple contracts, and there are benefits to in-house.
Okay, so one final question is, do you realistically expect to be able to hire a staff attorney who has, the complementary skills that are not farmed out to specialty firms, who will be useful to, clearly, if you hire a brand-new law school graduate who doesn't know squat, okay? I didn't know squat when I got out of school, okay?
Neither did I, no.
Then you would end up farming a lot of stuff out anyway, because you wouldn't want to wait for that person to come up to speed. But then on the other hand, if you can find somebody with a few years of experience and they know Utah law and the kinds of topics that you're going to be using her for day in and day out, she might be the best deal you ever made.
My recommendation is because the costs are pretty comparable and because we have a lot of capacity, like in-house, we have some great attorneys already on retainer too right now, it would be to continue with contract until we find a really good candidate.
Yes.
I think that, I wasn't here when, initially the candidates were hired, and I think that Joel is very eager to get like his team into place, and I think that we have the luxury of time to be specific about the skill set. Someone with municipal experience would be great,
Yes.
long time.
Critical, and has passed Utah bar.
Yeah, the Utah bar and those kinds of things. And so, of course, with Lori, given she had extensive experience, but not necessarily in Utah, so there was a learning curve, and that happens. But I think there's not an emergency. My recommendation would be in-house is the way to go, but we're not in an emergency, and we're in a position where we can be patient. And that would be my recommendation.
Thank you for presenting the recommendation. So, council, does anyone have heartburn with that recommendation going forward?
No, I think it's a great idea.
Okay, then I think that we are all set, and that was very thorough.
Thank you, Ben.
We really
Thank
thought
you.
about it. We took it seriously.
I guess I do have a question, though. So what are the next steps with that? Like, I understand, you can get by with contract until finding someone. So we'll contract with someone and we'll start looking, or
Yeah, I think
do we have to revamp like a
Post
job
with
description?
HR.
I think we talk to HR, review the job description, issue it as quickly as we can, and then identify like gaps in needs right now. If we're in it for like the long haul, then it changes things.
This is a position that answers directly to the city manager, and
So that's how we would proceed with next steps.
excellent. Thank you both. Next on our agenda is 11.5, discussion regarding city manager recruitment process. So here is where I am with the city manager recruitment process, and the fact that we are so close to an election. And the question has been, well, will it be the old council and mayor or the new council and mayor? And my answer is, for that process, I'd actually like it to be both. And here's what I would like to move forward with. So we can go ahead and post the position, and we can start to receive applications, but not close the position until after the election. And then once the position is closed, we'll put together a hiring committee that includes the two of the council members that are continuing, if not three, eventually, of the council members that are continuing, as well as the council members that are elected but not yet sworn in, and the mayor that is elected as well, as part of the interview committee. And then, of course, the candidate would interview with staff, and we would be quite rigorous, and we'd have, HR schedule that out. And so then when it came time for appointment, if it falls in December, whether it falls to me or to the next mayor, it's been a collaborative effort between the outgoing and the incoming, and that you council members that are continuing at the dais will be part of the process as well. So that's what I propose. I don't want to kick the can or be in limbo, and I also want the stability and assurance to staff that we're working toward that goal, and that members of staff that are interested in the position will have the opportunity to apply.
Well, you don't want to close the application process until after the new slate of council mayor has been identified so they can participate, right?
That's right. So it would be after the first week of November. Well, November 2nd is actually election day.
Yeah.
So it would be soon after that we would close the application. As we are,
Wow.
that would give, really, if, Danny? Yes. Do you mind joining the conversation? Sure. Thank you so much. When we went for when we did this process in the past, what was the length of time that we had the position posted?
So last time we posted the position for 4 weeks. So that was our initial posting. Yep.
And I think that's why I was thinking, so today's, September 28th, so we're October. And so if we hit into mid-November, that would be a similar time frame for that.
And the last time was when?
The last time we recruited for city manager was in 2015.
Mm-hmm. So that's when Rebecca Davidson was hired.
Correct.
Right. So that's what I propose in terms of process. Ronnie?
I had another process question. So just as Carly will be reviewing the job description for the city manager, will we be reviewing the job description? And I think there was some discussion about maybe doing a little polling of employees about, just like they're looking at needs for an attorney, just identifying if the description is what we want or needs any nudging, based on needs from staff before that gets listed.
Good question. What would that look like? So I would assume that we would start with the template that we have, and that we could do a council and department head review of that description. I think that's a great plan for that. And then bring together the suggestions and then have a finalized description and job description that we would post. Great suggestion. And then how else, what other thoughts about the process?
I'm wondering if advertising right now is optimal. It seems like we have kind of we're a specialized city. We only appeal to a relatively narrow group of people who want to live here as well as have the skills to be a good city manager. And so given the media focus on the city right now, if candidates or applicants are doing their due diligence, which I hope they would do, and they read about the recent changes to staffing and the national focus on our police department, I worry a little bit that that might scare some otherwise viable candidates off. So I wonder if either we should take our time starting the process a little bit to let that attention cool down and the media to focus elsewhere. And also if 4 weeks is really enough, because we really want to have an opportunity to get the right people, person or people, to apply.
Well,
it's really important that we,
yes.
yeah.
Well, and typically with hiring, you close the application, you look at what you have, and then you assess moving into interview or reopen the position. So I think that's right. That's a typical process.
Yeah, there's also the option of leaving the job open until filled. So, I mean, that's also a possibility where we just continue like we do with our police officers. We continue
Right.
to gather applicants and going through resumes and go through some interviews. If we have a batch of people that we feel are the ones that we may want. And then if nothing comes out of that, we're still collecting more to move forwards.
So posted is open till fill, but batch in November.
Yeah, that's definitely an option.
I like that.
So just timing wise though, just one thing I want to bring up, if we're going to do a review of the job description, I think we need to factor in that that's going to take some time to go to council and to department heads. I would say it's going to take a couple weeks. So just kind of factor that in when you're looking at your timeline on posting and recruiting and when you're hoping that it'll close and when we can actually do some kind of interviews. That, and then with the holidays, obviously, and for Thanksgiving and Christmas, sometimes that can throw a wrench into things. There's also some other options that we can also look into if you want to do as far as hiring a recruiting firm. That's also an option. Again, that's going to take more time, but is out there. And then I'm also open to any recommendations that anybody may have of where they would like this position posted besides our general postings that we do.
Yeah. Well, I do like the, I want to speak to what you were saying about hiring, applying for a job at this time. I would assume that when there is turnover of a city manager, there's some stuff. There's fear of like embedded culture. There are all kinds of like flags you want to grab and take a look at, right? And I think I'm not as concerned, but that we wouldn't move forward if we didn't feel like we had a viable candidate. So I like the suggestion of open until filled, and I like the idea of batching candidates. And maybe what we do is see after the first round where we land in terms of candidates, applications received, to give maybe preference to those that are a little bit more familiar with Moab, that would hear, oh, the city manager position is available, and I understand the culture and what's going on, and I'd like to apply for it, as opposed to somebody that just sees the posting or has comes up because of qualifications but doesn't really have, it's a toss-up for both. But what's good about getting the position drafted and posted is that we're not delaying the process, and I think that's really important to staff. So, if we are batching in November and are not happy with the candidates, then we can continue to keep it posted and maybe do some recruitment techniques at that time. I think that's where I would prefer to do. That's what I'd prefer to do.
I just like our procurement with an attorney or going in-house, I don't feel like we're in an emergency situation right now. And there seems to be, or there feels to be, some stability with staff and some calm. And I just, I'd like to be judicious and take our time with this process. And I mean, if it's going to take a couple weeks to get feedback from everybody, and then, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not feeling like we need to do this before the holidays or, you know, but that's because we are coming into an odd season. So, I mean, I just want to be respectful of that too.
Yep.
I want to add that I agree with both of these guys. I don't feel like there's a huge rush either. And if you were start opening apps, you know, applications from people, and you say, well, we're not going to end the process for quite some time out, it might discourage them. I mean,
Well, it would also encourage applications from, I'll just say it would encourage internal applications, this process that I'm proposing.
Right. But I agree with Karen and Kaylin both. I would suggest we take our time.
Does that make sense what I said, though? That not that I want to rush through it, but that having this first round would allow for internal applications.
So this isn't a fully formed thought, it's more of a question. But since it is the city manager is a political appointee, and it seems like there can be some turnover due to the changing political leadership in the community. If they get appointed by the new council and mayor, then they basically have ownership. Like there's that relationships that is established and potentially creates a little bit more stability for the next 2 years.
And the process that I'm proposing, like I said, whether it's an appointment made before December or after, it's still part of the hiring process to have, the old and new as part of the hiring process.
Yeah, if there's consensus, but I don't know that consultation without authority is quite the same as someone coming in being voted on by the people that they'll be answering to for the next 2 years, as opposed to the people that they'll be answering to for the next 2 weeks. I think that, so if we're not in a hurry, then I think that perhaps delaying until 20.
Yeah, I
for that
hear not in
final
a
step.
hurry, but at the same time, it's like staff, I'm sure, would like assurance. I'm sure staff would like us to move through the process.
Well, I think if we're going to look at updating the job description, that, like Danny says, that's going to take us a couple of weeks. That's our next meeting, or essentially our next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
We post it and it stays open for 4 weeks. That's
Thanksgiving.
At least Thanksgiving. And if there's nobody in the first group that is promising, we have to leave it open. And then it more than likely will fall through the new council and new mayor. But I don't see any value in not at least moving ahead with that process to update the job description and get that revamped. And it's not a fast process no matter what we do. But I think we owe it to the community as well as the staff and each other to move forward and not delay.
The question would really then just be how aggressive we want to be in recruitment. And I'm just suggesting that we see the first round before we get aggressive with recruitment and spend a lot of money.
Yeah, I don't have a sense of how much benefit more expensive recruiters provide. So, and it seems like with networks, at least with Colorado, as well as in-state, maybe there's a fair number of comparable communities and networks that might generate some candidates that would be qualified and enjoy living in Moab. So I think I'm okay with that, and I like the idea of revamping or relooking at the job description.
To me, it's an interesting split that you guys have informally arranged between your two set of responsibilities, and I'm wondering, well, I wonder if that will, sustain itself or not. I don't know.
I would think so until a candidate is selected. Yeah. I think for now, things seem to be pretty
So are you
stable.
guys comfortable with kind of taking our time, or are you like, God, I'm swamped, get me somebody? I mean, how do you feel about it?
We are happy to accommodate whatever process the council is interested in.
I think that's a
Engineer.
hard question for them to answer, Mike. I think they want us to make the decision and not ask them.
I keep asking her
what
that.
they
and say,
think
"Whatever you
about
guys
the
wanna do."
decision. Yeah.
We're certainly not in an emergency situation or anything like that. So I don't think you guys should be acting out of a sense of desperation or panic at all. Yeah, we can make it work, whatever it is.
Okay. Well, I think then we'll move forward with a review of the job description and then a posting of that job. And then we will not yet spend funds to do aggressive recruitment, although if council has ideas of where to post or where to reach, and if the three of you are going to cast, that we can, allow this to be a regional reach at first, and then we'll see where we are once we've posted and giving it 4 weeks and where we fall. And certainly, it's going to be, it's a process, and it should be. So wherever it falls in the timeline, the most important thing is that we start the process now. So that's what I am definitely committed to, and not kicking the can of just getting the process initiated. So that's what we'll do. And Danny, if you will lead the job description review process, and whatever process you think works best with getting feedback from council. I don't think at our council meeting we need to approve the job description. I just think that each council member needs to be comfortable with what the job description looks like. Yeah.
And sending it to department heads, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just talking council because
okay.
we're here,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
definitely like a review of department heads as well. I don't know that we send it to candidates that are, to candidates for review.
Okay.
I feel comfortable with the knowledge and skills and experience of this council and department heads to put together the right job description for the city manager. Okay. And now we're going to move on to the next item, which is approval of the bills against the city of Moab. Thank you, Danny.
Okay. I have a disclosure to make. This total that I'm going to read includes one check register that got stuck together in the last batch. And it was roughly $78,000, so that is included in this total.
Okay.
I move to approve the bills against the city of Moab in the amount of $1,582,228.69.
Thank you, Tony. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ronnie. That seems much higher. Why?
Did we buy some widgets?
Did we make a payment for reclamation?
We did. We had several payments to Zion's Finance.
Okay.
A lot of our debt service is due in September.
Debt service.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Now we're at agenda item 13, the executive closed session. Discussion of character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual or individuals. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
I move to go into closed session.
Thank you, Tawny. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. We're in closed session. Bye, everybody. And for this closed session, I think what we